All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. Show this out, show this out, show this out. All right, it's Friday night. Law of One. Welcome, Penny. Welcome, Reese. Welcome, Cody. Welcome, Rick. Welcome, Denise. Did I miss anybody? No, you guys all said hi. All right, show this out. Show this out, show this out, show this out. All right, let me take down this overlay here, right? And put myself up into full screen. It's Friday. Am I tripping? I know I talked about this in the chat just now, but I've been watching the news on every channel, and they keep saying that Kamala Harris is the first woman nominee for president. And I'm like, what did the official nominee? Wait, so in 2016, did Hillary Clinton in this timeline not become the very first female nominee that ran for president against Donald Trump and lost the vote and the presidency? Did that not happen in this reality? Because I could see if they were saying the first African-American female nominee or the first Indian American, not Native American Indian, but Indian female nominee. I would love to get that Ancestry.com DNA test from Kamala Harris and find out just exactly where that lies, how much she's claiming. I mean, because if she's like 132nd African American, I can claim Native American because I'm more than 132nd Native American. 5%. That's more than 130. That's more than 132nd. I'm 5% Native American. I don't claim it. I could live on a reservation and get paid free money and get housing from the federal government for the rest of my life because you only have to be 132nd or above to do so. So I could do that if I wanted to, but I'm not claiming that because look at me. Do I look like I'm Native American? Right? At least I am Native American, unlike Sacagawea when she was. I don't mean the literal Sacagawea. I'm talking about the what's her name? The senator. Liz Warren, she claimed that she was Native American until Donald Trump made fun of her, and she went to go get a test and found out she's none. I thought that was hilarious. Not Native at all. None. No DNA from Native Americans. None. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, so I don't know what's going on because they keep saying it. Even Fox. I had Fox on earlier while I was sitting here, and I was listening to Fox News, international news. And it wasn't a Democrat that said it. It was somebody who was supposed to be a Republican. I don't remember if she's an independent or not. Doesn't matter. She's a pundit on the Fox News contributor. And she said the same thing. First female candidate. And it was like, that's not the first time I've heard that. I could see if it's the other side and they were just not paying attention to what's going on. But they've been saying this now all week during the Democratic National Convention. First female candidate. And I'm like, 2016, the race was Republican side, Donald Trump, Democrat side, Hillary Clinton. And she lost. So I'm wondering if there's something weird with the timeline. Peter, welcome, brother, welcome. I'm wondering if there's something weird with the timeline because they keep saying she's the first female candidate. But then again, they're also pretending that Donald Trump is the incumbent, that he was the president, currently is the president, trying to run for a second term. So they're also pretending that Kamala Harris isn't the vice president of the United States currently, and that she's not part of this regime of Joe Biden. They're pretending Joe Biden didn't exist and that Donald Trump has been the president since 2016, which would be really weird because that's almost 20 years as being the president of the United States. 2016 to 2024. Right? That's a long time. In 2 more years, it'd be, or 10 years. I'm tripping, right? 2016 to 2024, 2026 would be 10 years, right? Then he wouldn't be able to be the president because you can only be the president twice and you can't be the president again. So if he had 8 years already and this is the end of his 8 years, he can't be running. So they're pretending that she's not the vice president. She hasn't been in office for 4 years and that Joe Biden was something else that happened and it had nothing to do with her. And she had no say over any policy whatsoever. Yet she's the one who passed most of the bills because if there's a tie, when they go to vote on it, and she's in the House after the Senate comes up with a bill and they pass it, and then it goes to the House and the House has to vote on it to ratify it. If there is a deadlock tie, the vice president has the authority. They have to vote. Whoever the vice president is votes yay or nay. And she voted yay on every spending bill that has put us into the position that we're in. So it was literally her decision, not Joe Biden's. Okay, literally hers. Joe Biden just signed it after it was approved because he said he would. So she can't get out of that and say, I didn't have anything to do with that, because she voted for it. The reason the country is so far in debt by trillions of dollars right now and the inflation is high, she in fact voted on the Inflation Act. Was a split decision vote. Okay. So there was like 4 different things that she voted on, and all 4 of those things created the scenario, including the allowing people to come across the border, spending money to go over to hundreds of trillions of dollars, not quite, that's an exaggeration, but hundreds of billions of dollars to go to Ukraine, and hundreds of billions of dollars of stimulus money that went out to people, even though we didn't need it, and money for the Fed, so it was in the Inflation Reduction Act, which flooded the market with like $2 trillion. She had to vote on the tie for all those. You can look these up. I'm not making them up. Okay, so she literally is the reason that everything is in the shape that it's in, and she's pretending I didn't have anything to do with that. That was that other guy, and it's all Trump's fault. So I get that there's a lot of stuff going on there's a bunch of lies, and they're just making things up and pretending all kinds of things. But you can't pretend that Hillary Clinton and that didn't exist and then have her speak at your convention for you to become the nominee, and at the same time have people say you're the first female nominee in the history of the United States while Hillary Clinton is on the stage speaking in your behalf. But Kamala Harris wouldn't know that because she was only in the building for about a total of an hour out of the, 4 times 12 hours. She was in there once to begin it in the beginning, and she spoke, and then she split, and she didn't stay there very long. And then she was in every day for about a half an hour to an hour, and then she would take off. And she did that the entire time until she showed up at the last minute after they lied to the entire world and said Taylor Swift or Beyonce is the special guest that's going to speak tonight. And everybody kept waiting and tuned in from all around the world to get the ratings up so that they could say they had the biggest ratings in the history of the world at the Democratic convention. And then that keynote speaker that was Kamala Harris, when she walked out, and they contacted Beyonce and Taylor Swift, and they were like, we don't know anything about that. We were never scheduled to be there. We didn't have to drop out. They never even spoke to us when we chose not to be there. Okay. So they lied to the entire world to get the entire world to tune in, because they told them either, and they said that. It wasn't like they said a keynote speaker and everybody ran with it. They said Taylor Swift or Beyonce is going to be here tonight to speak and sing. And that there will be they leaked that information out. So they said it to the press to get the press to say it to the whole world so that everybody tuned in, and neither one of those people were ever scheduled. And when they were asked, they were like, we were not contacted. We were never scheduled. So they did that. So now they're saying we had the greatest ratings in the history of politics on that show, because there are 100 bazillion, gazillion, trillion Google number of humans watched it worldwide. Yeah, because you lied and said that the 2 most popular singers in the history of the planet were both going, one of them was going to show up and speak and then sing. And you knew that was not true, and you still floated it. So it's not out of the ordinary to hear them also trying to say that Hillary Clinton didn't exist when she was on stage speaking about her being the president running against Donald Trump in 2016, because that's what they're running on. They're running on nothing to see here. I'm brand new. You don't know who I am. My name is Kamala Harris, and I'm from San Francisco. Just came from San Francisco about an hour ago, and now I'm here to talk to you guys about what's going on. And I used to be a DA in San Francisco yesterday. Okay, and that's what they're doing. I mean, anybody who's sitting around going, "What?" My brother asked me, how is it they're getting away with that? And I'm like, well, because everybody on TikTok between the age of 0 and 35 have no idea who the president and the vice president is. They don't know who Kamala Harris is. They don't know that she's the vice president of the United States. So they're watching all of this sound bites on TikTok and listening to what everybody says. So them saying very first female nominee for a presidency, great thing in history, they believe it because they have no idea. And people ask people of that age group, who's the vice president? I have no idea. They don't know. So that's the problem that everybody has. So I told my brother, truth is, they're lying and gaslighting the people who are not smart enough to actually know what's going on. And they're just tuning in for their very first time in their life because Taylor Swift told them to. And they're like, what's this? Very first female. We need to vote for her because she's the first female. They have not let a female do this ever. And most of them aren't old enough to remember that Hillary Clinton was running for president, because if they're 30, that means they were 20. That means they have no idea what was going on. They just got out of high school and they weren't watching TV. They weren't watching the news. When dad and mom were watching the news, they were running out of that room as quick as they could. And if they weren't, mom and dad were telling them, get out of the room because we're trying to watch the news. So they have no idea about that. And so all those people have no idea. They didn't even know who Barack Obama, if they tuned into the Democratic National Convention, they were sitting there watching it going, I have no idea who all these old people are. None of them. Truth. Right? Okay. So I was just wondering that if you guys are out there in the world and there's anybody who doesn't remember Hillary Clinton and she did not run for president in this timeline, let me know, because otherwise then it's just par for the course and they're just lying. But even Fox was toting that little candy bit, which is weird. So that's why I questioned it. Before that, I was like, oh, look, they're lying about her being the first woman to ever run for the president and being nominated to run for president in the history of the United States. Wow, okay. I'm like, whatever, man. That's a total lie. Nobody's going to buy it. And then I see Fox doing it. And I'm like, why would they tote the party line? And that's when I started asking you guys, is there anybody else out there that remembers that happening? So I'm curious if there was a shift in the timeline and Hillary Clinton didn't run for president against Donald Trump. So then I'm going to wonder if you guys know who Donald Trump is and if he won the presidency, if he was the 45th president of the United States. And if he was, who do you guys think he beat in an election? I'd love to know the answer to that, right? Cody says, I was 18 when Bush got elected, and I was so mad, but no one in my class understood. Right? Well, I mean, yeah, you were mad because you were programmed to be mad that Bush. Which Bush? I don't know how old you are. There was two of them. There was, unless you don't remember that, there was George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. So there was George Herbert Walker Bush, who is George Sr., and then George Walker Bush, who is George Jr. So it's George Jr. You must be, I don't think you're that old. So if you were 18, then that means you were George Jr. And he was elected, 41. So that was George Jr. when he was elected. He was the president in 2001, September 11, 2001. He was the president at the time when that took place. So you're talking about George W. Bush, not H.W. Bush, but George W. Bush. I go all the way back to when I was a little boy, Jimmy Carter, but I don't remember much of that. I remember him being president, but I don't remember the run up to be president. The first one I remember was 1980 with Ronald Reagan. And I was 13, 14. So, but which is weird because the timeline shifted. So if he ran in 1979 to be the president in 1980 and then ran again in 1984 to be the president in 1985, I was born in 1967. I've done this math several times. I voted, the very first time I voted was for Ronald Reagan in his second term. Let's do the math. Okay. So if I was going to be 20 in 1987, so 1988, 87, 86, 85, I would have been 20, 19, 18, 84. I would not have been old enough to vote. I would have been 17 years of age and would not have been able to vote because I would have just turned 17 in that September, and that November was when I would have voted. I voted for Ronald Reagan in his second term. I was 18 years of age in the timeline I came from, but in this current timeline, I was only 17, so I could not have voted for Ronald Reagan in his second term, but I did. Okay. Yeah. Peter is saying, and you're speaking to the thing, and it's coming in a little bit wrong. But he's saying, reminding George Senior George Bush he wasn't in the FBI. He was actually in the CIA. He was the director of the CIA. Not too long after that, he gave up the director of the CIA to run with Ronald Reagan as his running mate. He gave up the directorship of the CIA. So why is that important? Because he was actually in Dallas during the assassination of Kennedy in 1962, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s uncle. And he claimed that he was not in Texas. He was not in Dallas. And I've actually seen photos of him standing outside the door to the entrance to the emergency room where they took John F. Kennedy with his head blown off, standing there smoking a cigarette outside that door to the hospital at the time, right after they rushed the president in that hospital. So he claimed he wasn't in Dallas. Then he claimed he wasn't in, but then he said he was in Texas, but he couldn't remember his whereabouts. Weird that you're in the Secret Service and you're in the state and you don't remember where you're at when the president got killed. One of the greatest moments in history, especially if you're in a Secret Service, you're pretty much going to remember. I remember where I was when 9/11 happened. Okay. There's no way that he didn't remember that. So he was lying, and he had something to do with it and the cover up. And he went on to become the director of the CIA. And then he became the vice president with Ronald Reagan for 2 terms, and then came back after that, not directly, but there was, in between there, because there was Clinton was there in the 90s, and then he became the president right after Clinton, unless I'm messing up the timeline. And the very first thing that George Herbert Walker Bush did when he became president of the United States was signed an executive order making it illegal for the Secret Service of the United States of America to assassinate any president or head of state from any country without the express written consent of and knowledge of the president of the United States. Weird that he would do that when he became president for a guy that was in the Secret Service who didn't remember where he was in Texas at the time. Couldn't say he was in Dallas, but there's pictures of him in Dallas helping escort the president into the hospital after his head's been blown off and he's been shot 2 or 3 times, and smoking a cigarette, and claimed he was never even there. So then he goes on to somehow get the director of the CIA, fast track to the director of the CIA. And then when he was asked to run for the presidency as the vice president, he had to step down from that. But then as soon as he becomes the president, first thing he does is make it illegal for the Secret Service to assassinate his ass. Think about that, right? And of course, they put a 120-year ban referendum on investigating the John F. Kennedy assassination and the Bobby Kennedy assassination after that. And I would wager my weight in gold that they're going to do the same thing with the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And that's how you will know that it was the deep state who tried to kill him and had something to do with it. And they don't want to get caught, even if it was literally their negligence and them saying, let's just let things sit around and do nothing and hope somebody shoots his ass. But everything that happened there, a 5-year-old kid could have saw all of that taking place and would have taken precautions against somebody shooting the president. So pretty sure that was an inside job done by the deep state of the United States of America to kill Donald Trump. And professionals who were in war and their job was to know those answers have said the same thing, many of which are coming, whistleblowers coming out and saying, look, this has been my job. I trained and taught people. I've posted some of it, guys that were actually taught this, that trained people in warfare in Iraq, Afghanistan, and different places around the world, that were 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, worked for the CIA, worked for the NSA, some worked for private agencies after that, and they've all said this exact same thing, that if this was an accident, then there should be nobody left in any Secret Service in the United States right now, that every single person that was any way touching this, so every person in the Secret Service needs to be fired all the way down to the janitor, and everybody on that police department from there and the field team from there. Everybody needs to be fired and held accountable, and they all need to go to jail because they're the most incompetent. The Keystone Cops would have done a better job of falling over each other and accidentally knocking Donald Trump off the stage before he got shot than what happened there. So they've supposedly suspended like 5 people right now, but I don't think there's going to be much that's ever going to come of it, right? So it's all going to be gaslighting. Anyways, okay, so let's get away from that kind of platform. But I was just trying to figure out, like I said, to reiterate, is there a timeline shift that I'm unaware of? Because everybody on television and the news agencies on all sides are calling Kamala Harris the very first female candidate in the history of the United States to run for president. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton, unless she's got a penis and I'm unaware of it, Hillary Clinton is in fact a woman and ran for president against Donald Trump and lost. So it wasn't like she wasn't nominated in the, you know what I mean? Oh, no, she wasn't nominated. She didn't accept the nomination. Yes, she was. And she ran. We had an election and she was part of it. And then she lost. And then she spent the rest of the time from then until now claiming that the election was stolen. Weird, because when Donald Trump said that about his second term, everybody was like, he's insane and he's crazy and he's an election denier. And the Hillary Clinton, who is still denying that election, called him an election denier. I don't know. It's all cuckoo. Okay. So, all right. So let's start with the law of one. Now that I've gone 23 minutes trying to figure out why it is that everybody on the planet is saying that Hillary Clinton didn't exist in this timeline, but there is changes to the timeline. I just pointed out a couple of those. I voted for Ronald Reagan in his second term. And currently in this timeline, I was not old enough. I turned 17 3 months before the election, so I couldn't have voted, because you have to be 18 everywhere in this nation to vote for the president of the United States. But I voted for the president of the United States. And back then you had to show ID to get in. So it wasn't like now where I could be from Russia or China and I can vote for the president of the United States in the state of California, because that's the way it is now. In the state of California and anywhere else, you can just walk in and if it's racially profiling you, if they ask you if you even speak English, when you need an interpreter, they just start interpreting for you because, well, just because he needs an interpreter doesn't mean he's not from this country. Come on now, right? So it doesn't matter what country you're from. So if you have relatives that are across the border somewhere and you want somebody to vote, you can just have them fly in, get out, take them over there, get them to vote, and get them back on a plane and fly back to their country. Nobody's going to be asking any questions in about 20 states of the United States from you. You don't have to show any ID, none of that. Just know that, right? So if you guys are okay with that, that it doesn't matter. That's the truth of what happens. You can look that up. It's the truth of what happens. And then in some places, you just need to have an ID. Well, there's 8 states currently that are issuing driver's licenses to anybody on the planet. You don't even have to show up here legally. All you got to do is come across the border, walk into a DMV, and they'll give you a driver's license, right? And then you take that driver's license and you can vote, because now you have a driver's license in the United States. It's legal identification for you in the United States to then register to vote. And they'll give you a card to vote, and then you can vote. That's how they're getting around that. So if you guys are okay with all of that, then disregard anything that I'm saying. But the timeline has shifted many times since I was a boy. One of which is I couldn't have voted for Ronald Reagan in his second term because I would turn 17 2 months before the election. So I would not have been old enough. It would have been another year later, and I would have not been old enough to vote because the election was in 84 for the 85 year. And that would have meant that I was 17 at the time. Okay. So, see, now I'm doing the math. 84, right? No, it was 3 years. So 2019, 18, 17. No, yeah, I was 17. Okay. So let's start with the law of one. I'm going to do a sound check and we'll see what you guys are if you guys can hear it okay. But yeah, let me know if there's people out there who don't know who Hillary Clinton is. and that she did not run against Donald Trump in the 2016 election and lose the election. So if you guys are out there and you have that in your memory, let me know, because otherwise, because if so, I'm right and the timeline changed and there's some of us that still remember the other timeline. That means we came from a different reality than we're in currently. So I'd love to hear from you guys if that's a thing for you. Okay, so Steve, welcome. Right, I didn't see you there. I see that you're there, and you said hello to some people. So hi, welcome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play and start with the Law of One, and you guys let me know if you can hear it okay. And I'll turn up the sound here because I know it's low right now. We'll do a sound check. We'll get started.
June 12th, 1981. 57.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 57.1 Questioner. Could you first give me an indication of the instrument's condition, please? Ra. I am Ra. This instrument is under a most severe psychic attack. This instrument is bearing up well due to replenished vital energies and a distortion towards a sense of proportion which your peoples call a sense of humor. This attack is potentially disruptive to this contact for a brief period of your space/time. 57.2 Questioner.
All right, good. Thank you, Penny, for letting me know. Thank you, Rick, for letting me know that you guys can hear it okay, because I did turn it up a little bit. So we are live. I didn't say, right? We are live. Kathy Graves is over there on Instagram, so welcome. So we are live on Instagram, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on Facebook. So share this out to wherever you're at. And hi, Kathy. I hadn't gone over there to take a look to see if anybody was over there on, because it tells me if somebody joins in live over there. Okay, so you guys can hear it okay, so we're going to go ahead. So right now, Carla's under a psychic attack that happens to her entire life, up till her demise, which was somewhere between 2012 and 2015. I don't remember the exact date. And since timelines change all the time, there's no telling what date she actually died in this reality. Okay, so let's continue here.
Is there anything in particular that we can do in addition to what we are doing to alleviate this attack? Ra. I am Ra. There is nothing you can do to alleviate the attack. The understanding of its mechanism might be of aid. 57.3 Questioner. Could you tell us its mechanism? Ra. I am Ra. The Orion group cannot interfere directly but only through pre-existing distortions of mind/body/spirit complexes. Thus,
right. So I wanted to point that out. A lot of people don't realize that because there's not anybody here on world currently, right? If there were, they could try and kill her in the physical here. But they left right after they got here. They weren't here very long. And then when a group of us showed up chasing them, they ran for the hills as fast as they could. But they left these yahoos in charge down here, right? So they convinced the people who were the descendants of the Luciferians, the descendants of Lucifer, who was one of the leaders from Atlantis, who were the people who came here that were from the people, Errol's group, the aliens that came through that didn't happen in Roswell, New Mexico in 1948, when there wasn't a crash in Roswell, New Mexico, and there wasn't survivors. And one of the survivors wasn't a female gray alien called Errol, who wasn't a drone. And the person occupying that drone or controlling that drone wasn't an alien named Errol that was sitting in a spaceship parked on the outskirts of our solar system. And she didn't talk through telepathy to a female nurse that didn't exist at the military base on Roswell, New Mexico, and didn't work for the CIA and the military intelligence to interview her over a course of 3 to 4 months at the time, and then keep as much information as she could and rewrite it all down just before her demise in 2016, and didn't get that information out to a reporter who got that information out to myself and many other people. And I didn't do 23 episodes talking about that incident that didn't happen. And she didn't refer to the people, the Moldekians, the Atlanteans, as the old guard, a group of people that used to occupy this area that they were not at war with and didn't fight against, and none of that ever took place. And there wasn't a civil war on this earth between two factions of what we referred to, and all the people down here referred to as the War of the Gods, saying that there was an alien species that was attacking one another. There was a civil war. and the old guard, the Luciferians, who are now the Illuminati people, and wrongly so, who everybody calls the Anunnaki. They were stranded here, so that's where that theory comes from, that that this is a penal colony, and that people were doing genetic engineering to the human race, because they were trying to do genetic engineering to the human race, the evil people who were Atlanteans. And there was a civil war, and the good guys won, but the bad guys said they defeated the bad guys and they left. And they did not. They lost, and they were stranded here with no spaceships, no technology. And so they were the penal colony. And so because of that, they've been working since then to try and regain space flight so they could get the hell out of here. They got space flight, but the people are still here. Some of their descendants are still here because they left behind most of the people that were still down here because they had to interbreed with humans, and they lost most of their brain capacity, and their skulls are regular human skulls now. They're not this elongated, huge skull with a big brain. All of that was bred out because, weirdly, the Neanderthal humans have a superior DNA, and their gene pool was breeding out those things from these Luciferians, these Moldekians, these evil Atlanteans, getting rid of their DNA, and the human DNA was taking over. So most of them that are here now who claim superiority from the Illuminati and that we are superior in every way, they're just humans now. Their IQ is not any higher than the IQ of the humans on this planet, and they just barely got space flight in 1938. So they were able to get off world then, and they left behind even their own relatives. Okay, so you guys will figure that out as time goes forward, right? So what you have to realize is that if they were still here, getting back on point with Ra, if they were still here, Galactica again, right? Yeah. So if they were still here, they would be able to send an assassin to kill Carla, but they couldn't and can't because they're gone. And it's just these their relatives left over that have relatively a little bit of their DNA in them. And they are believe they own the planet, and they have the technology to be able to leave the Earth and start trading with other people. And they're doing so, but they're not anymore capable. And in 84, 40 years ago, they weren't capable of that kind of assassination. Then in the 1990s, they tried to nuke the planet, and we see that it's still here. So it didn't work, right? They tried it again under Donald Trump, where they were firing nukes from a deep state submarine. One fired at Japan, got rendered inert and fell into the ocean. Then they fired one at Hawaii. And that poor guy who sounded the alarm because he saw a nuclear missile come out of they were trying to make it look like North Korea was firing them, by the way. And he thought there was a missile going to hit Hawaii, and he sounded the alarm, and then it fell into the ocean. And they fired him and told him that he was a moron for doing that. And he was like, there was a missile. Well, where is that missile? Would it just disappear? Yeah, it actually did. The coalition rendered it inert and stopped it. And then they started to go after the submarine. The submarine ran for its life and took off, and they let it get away instead of blowing it up, and they let it get away. There is still free will, but because there's free will, you don't have to believe me. So they can't just send an assassin, and couldn't even back then, to kill Carla. So they have to attack her. This is what Ra is saying, from the fourth dimension, and trying to occupy the space near her to be able to cross-dimensional work an assassin cross-dimension. But the only way that they can do any damage is she has to have something wrong with her that they can exacerbate and make worse. If she has a heart palpitation, they can try and turn it into a heart attack. If she's got a small aneurysm in her brain, they can make it explode and kill her. If she has a clogged artery, they can make it explode or clog up and have a heart attack. Something, and that's what's happening to Carla currently. So let's continue here.
In this case, this entity reached for an heavy object with one hand, and this miscalculated action caused a deformation or distortion of the skeletal/muscular structure of one of this instrument's appendages. Your aid may be helpful in supporting this instrument in the proper care of this distortion, which is equivalent to what you call your post-operative state when bones are not firmly knit. This instrument needs to be aware of care necessary to avoid such miscalculated actions, and your support in this state of awareness is noted and encouraged.
Before we go to the next one, Penny said, crap, I have a nail in my tire. I just went out the other day. Today's Friday, so it was either Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember which day it was. I looked. I was out on the back patio putting laundry in, and I happened to look up at my van, and my driver's side tire looked low. So I was like, do I have a low tire? So I went out there, and sure enough, I did. So I looked, and I couldn't find a nail. So I drove with almost a flat tire down the streets of the gas station and put air in it and drove it back home, and it was holding air. And I parked it and thought, mental note. I didn't see a nail, but mental note, take a look at it. A couple hours later, I looked out there again, and the tire was low, and I was like, time to go and have somebody look at it. By the time I drove down to the tire shop, which was only about a half a mile away, the tire was completely flat. Turns out those tires are the tires that I had on the van when I bought the van. So I don't know how old they are. The ones that are on the back were brand new. I bought last year. And we rotated the ones from the back to the front because they had still a lot of tread on them. But apparently they were getting so old that the sidewalls cracked, and the weight of the van made the air bleed out. And so I was like, replace both front tires then, because if this one's that bad, that one over there is not too far behind it. Let's get rid of that. So I just had to spend $275 on 2 brand new tires this week, earlier this week. So Penny, if you just got a nail in it, you can get, you can have the nail taken out and have it patched, or you can get the liquid stuff that you spray in your tire yourself, and you can literally spray that stuff in there and pull the nail out and put air in it and drive it until that stuff seals it yourself. So you can do that, and but otherwise, you'll have to buy another tire depending on whether it's completely flat. So that sucks, Penny, that you have a nail in the tire, right? Because I get it. I just went through flat tire and had to pay a lot of money just this week. Okay. So let's continue with Carla being attacked and Dawn trying to figure out how they can combat that again. And if that's I can't say kind of, is a reoccurring theme, almost every 2 or 3 sessions, they're finding out that Carla is under some sort of psychic attack.
57.4 Questioner, is there anything that we can specifically do to alleviate the problem that is already existing? Ra, I am Ra. This information is harmless, thus we share it, though it is transient, lacking the principle but only offering a specific transient effect. The wrist area should be wrapped as in the sprained configuration, as you call this distortion, and what you call a sling may be used on this distorted right side of the body complex for 1 diurnal period. At that time symptoms, as you call these distortions, shall be reviewed and such repeated until the distortion is alleviated. The healing work to which each is apprentice may be used as desired. It is to be noted that a crystal is available. 57.5 Questioner, which crystal is that? Ra, I am Ra. The flawed but sufficient crystal which rests upon the digit of this instrument's right hand. 57.6 Questioner, would you tell me how to use that crystal for this purpose? Ra, I am Ra. This is a large question. You first, as a mind/body/spirit complex, balance, and polarize the self, connecting the inner light with the upward spiraling inpourings of the universal light. You have done exercises to regularize the processes involved. Look to them for the preparation of the crystallized being. Take, then, the crystal and feel your polarized and potentiated balanced energy channeled in green ray healing through your being, going into and activating the crystal in regularity of frozen light, which is the crystal. The crystal will resound with the charged light of incarnative love and light energy, and will begin to radiate in specified fashion, beaming, in required light vibrations, healing energy, focused and intensified towards the magnetic field of the mind/body/spirit complex which is to be healed. This entity requesting such healing will then open the armor of the overall violet/red ray protective vibratory shield. Thus the inner vibratory fields, from center to center in mind, body, and spirit, may be interrupted and adjusted momentarily, thus offering the one to be healed the opportunity to choose a less distorted inner complex of energy fields and vibratory relationships. 57.
Right. So welcome, Carly. I see you there. Carly Evans just popped in and said hi. If you don't say hi in the chat, I don't know that you're here. I just see numbers and that's it. Okay. And it looks like Cody said, Storm, finish watching later. So depending on where you're at. I'm here in California, in the central part of Northern California. I guess it's called Northern California because I'm a little bit past halfway from the Mexican border, in the Sacramento area, and we're covered with clouds out here right now because there's a storm front that came down from the north, and we don't have any rain here, but we're too far south for that. But and then here we are. But this time next week, it's going to be 100 degrees here again. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's supposed to be 100 and some odd degrees here again, about 100, 102, 103 degrees. Right now, it's like 70 out there and chilly. Crazy, right? All right, let's continue.
10.7 Questioner. Should the crystal be held in the right hand of the healer? Ra. I am Ra. This is incorrect. There are two recommended configurations. The first, the chain about the neck to place the crystal in the physical position of the green ray energy center. Second, the chain hung from the right hand, out.
Yeah, Carly, I figured you must be Australia. Rick is from Australia, and he just woke up just before the show, was saying he just woke up. So I know that the time there is like right now, it's like 8:45 a.m., depending on where you are, because Australia's pretty big. So depending on whether you're in the east or the west, the other way around, west, east, right? So it's 1 hour or two difference. So it's either 8:45 or 9:45, I think, where you're at. But yeah, welcome South Australia. All right, let's continue.
Stretched, wound about the hand in such a way that the crystal may be swung so as to affect sensitive adjustments. We offer this information realizing that much practice is needed to efficiently use these energies of self. However, each has the capability of doing so, and this information is not information which, if followed accurately, can be deleterious. 57.8 Questioner. Would an unflawed crystal be considerably more effective than the flawed one that we now have? Ra. I am Ra. Without attempting to deem the priorities you may choose, we may note that the regularized or crystallized entity, in its configuration, is as critical as the perfection of the crystal used. 57.9 Questioner. Does the physical size of the crystal have any relationship to the effectiveness in the healing? Ra. I am Ra. In some applications concerning planetary healing, this is a consideration. In working with an individual mind/body/spirit complex, the only requirement is that the crystal be in harmony with the crystallized being. There is perhaps a lower limit to the size of what you may call a faceted crystal, for light coming through this crystal needs to be spread the complete width of the spectrum of the one to be healed. It may further be noted that water is a type of crystal which is efficacious also, although not as easy to hang from a chain in your density.
Right. So you have to realize, most people don't realize that because crystal or crystalline structure is like glass, and we use it to make glass, and that water. So water is a crystal as well, and this glass, which was sand, is also a crystal. So people don't realize that liquid and solids are the same but slightly different in properties, right? So that's why water. There, I don't remember who the name of the person. Welcome, Reese. By the way, I didn't say hi. I don't remember the guy's name, and I can't think of his name. Who was like the godfather of science, physics, and water. I read his book, and I can't think of his name right this second. I wasn't thinking about physics, and he was trying to. He's the father of thermodynamics. He was trying to point out that water is viable and you can charge it with energy. Now the Egyptians knew that. If you look at the pyramid and the pyramidal structure, that they actually, if you go under the pyramid, you realize that there's an aqueduct down there, or an aquifer down there. And right now it's dried up, but at once they used to have water underneath there, and it used to lap up against the bottom of the pyramid. And by doing so, just by waves moving, because the Nile was brought right up to the pyramid, there was a dock. They've uncovered a dock that was only about 100 yards or 200 yards away from the pyramid at Giza. So the Nile at one point flowed right up to that, and there was underground river that is still there, and it used to flood. It used to go underneath the Sphinx and the pyramid, So it actually connected at one point 100,000 years ago. The Nile used to flow through there. Part of the Nile, a tributary from the Nile, used to flow right there, and then it ended up underground, and the Nile itself went around the top above ground. And at the time of the pyramid being built, the Nile was brought right up to it again. So there's a lot of theory about how they got the stones there by bringing boats there and using the lock system to build the pyramids. A good friend of mine has written a book about it. And in fact, he has a website called the Pyramid Water Pump, or the Pyramid Pump. You can go and take a look at that. And he's been talking about it for years, and he actually has more of he can prove where nobody else can prove any theory. Aliens built it, no proof. The slaves built it, still no proof of that. They can't duplicate what they claim is what the people did to move those big blocks. But his theory actually does prove that it's viable. It could happen exactly the way he claims that it did. And I've had him on my show several times. He and I are friends. And I mean, we haven't met physically in real life, but we've been friends for about 10 years or close to it in the industry. So I was just talking to him day before yesterday, as a matter of fact. So you should look into that idea. So water, you can charge it with energy, and stirring water, churning water creates energy in there. So water, as is flowing naturally, as it ebbs and flows in rivers, there'll be areas where it'll have like an eddy, and it'll actually spin that charges the water with certain properties and positive energy. Water droplets. This is why people love to take a shower. There's a little teeny film that makes up raindrops, or a drop from a shower of water. And that little teeny film that makes the water droplet in the air and holds the water in a droplet is a negatively charged ion. And when that hits our skin, that negatively charged ion, when it bursts and the water hits our skin, and the energy is released from that negatively charged ion, and that negatively charged ion reacts in our body as a positive energy that makes us feel good and creates endorphins in our brain and gives us energy. That's why when it starts to rain, people love to go out and play in the rain because it feels good. They look up at the rain falling on there. And the same thing why we created showers and we like to take a shower. It's because it makes us feel good, not just the warm water or the hot water beating on you, which also does the same thing because it has an effect of a massage effect on our bodies. And the heat helps the muscles to loosen up. But on top of that, science knows that on top of all of that, the negatively charged ions that are in that water droplet. So that's just by converting the water from the way it is to individual droplets. By aerating it, it creates that. It's already that energy is already inherent in water, in the properties of water itself, because it is a crystalline structure. It is no different than a hard crystal. The hard crystal just moves slower. Glass is a liquid. You just don't know it. If you don't realize that, you can look at any building, especially houses that have window panes. And if you go and find a house that's 100 years old or more, and you measure the window pane itself down towards the bottom, down at the bottom, you're going to find that the glass is thicker than it is at the top because it's been sitting there and it's moving so slow that it's taken like 100 years for that to start to settle down at the bottom. It moves so slow we don't see it. We think this is a solid, and it breaks when we drop it on the ground or hit it with something, and it breaks into pieces. It's just trying to remove itself and go back to the sand particles that it was before. But even sand that you step on, you get the granules on you, and it's like sandpaper, right? And that's actually a liquid. So science knows this. Okay, so you have to realize that stuff. Caroline, welcome. So science knows this, and you have to actually realize that. So Ra's talking about that, but it's hard to wear a necklace of water on this planet because it is a liquid. You'd have to wear a liquid inside of something, so you would have to put it in a solid to be able to have it there. So that's funny that Ra even brought that up.
57.10 Questioner. Placing this end of this pencil sitting on my navel, would the point of it then represent the position where the crystal should hang for proper green ray? Is this position correct? Ra, I am Ra. We attempt your measurements. From 2 to 5.4 centimeters towards your heart is optimal. 57.11 Questioner.
Oh, Danny, welcome. I didn't see you there. I just happened to look up and saw your name. So, Danny, welcome. Like I said before, if you're new here, show this out, right? So make sure you guys share this out and get some more people. All right, so let's continue.
Using this piece of wood then, I would determine the position between the piece of wood and my navel. I would determine the position to be approximately the top of the piece of wood. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. 57.12 Questioner. How does the healing that you just told us about relate to the healing done in the King's Chamber in the Giza Pyramid? Ra, I am Ra. There are two advantages to doing this working in such a configuration of shapes and dimensions. Firstly, the disruption or interruption of the violet/red armoring or protective shell is automatic. In the second place, the light is configured by the very placement of this position in the 7 distinctive color or energy vibratory rates, thus allowing the energy through the crystallized being, focused with the crystal, to manipulate with great ease the undisturbed and, shall we say, carefully delineated palette of energies or colors, both in space/time and in time/space. Thus the unarmored being may be adjusted rapidly. This is desirable in some cases, especially when the armoring is the largest moiety of the possibility of continued function of body complex activity in this density. The trauma of the interruption of this armoring vibration is then seen to be lessened. We take this opportunity to pursue our honor/duty, as some of those creating the pyramid shape, to note that it is in no way necessary to use this shape in order to achieve healings, for seniority of vibration has caused the vibratory complexes of mind/body/spirit complexes to be healed to be less vulnerable to the trauma of the interrupted armoring. Furthermore, as we have said, the powerful effect of the pyramid, with its mandatory disruption of the armoring, if used without the crystallized being, used with the wrong intention, or in the wrong configuration, can result in further distortions of entities which are perhaps the equal of some of your chemicals which cause disruptions in the energy fields in like manner. 50.
Right. So before they move on to the next question here. So literally you have to realize that people always ask, should we be building a pyramid to try and get a pyramid to be turned on, whereas the capstone's missing from the current one, so it's not activated properly, but it is still working. We don't need that stuff anymore. They have to remember that pyramid is 12,000 years old minimum. Robert Schoch and a few other people think it's far older than that. But let's just assume that the Egyptians are right and it was only built about 12,000 years ago. Literally they were saying about 20 years ago, they were saying it was built 1,000 years ago. Or then it was 2,000 years ago. Then it was 3,000 years ago. And the human race was only 2,000 years old, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years old maximum until about 5 years ago. And then they were like, well, we might be 12,000 years old. And today they're like, okay, we've been here for like hundreds of thousands of years. And it's possible that because they can't deny things like 75,000 years ago. I mean, we literally have a couple of places that we've discovered and dated back to a destruction of a global society that died out 77,000 years ago, meaning those people went from caveman to a global society with better technology than we have now, only they didn't have machine technology like we do in computers like we do. They were crystalline, which is weird because the Australians were saying that there was these people that were crystalline, had crystalline ships and used crystals to fly around the earth in spaceships that came to Australia thousands and thousands of years ago. And everybody said the Aborigines in Australia were just making up stories, and oops. And now we have actual scientists saying the same thing, and not based on what the Aborigine elders were telling people, but based on what we found in other parts of the world. Wow, weird. So now science is caught up with these old scrolls that have been out there in spirituality talking about destructions of the human race, like, for instance, the ones in the Colburn Bible in Scotland that came out of Egypt with Moses. He wasn't the one that had them, but there were priests that were with that Exodus that came out of Egypt, who brought Egyptian scrolls telling of a time, two or three destructions of the earth prior to the deluge, the flood. And just up until about 20 years ago, the flood was the only destruction of the human race that ever occurred. And now we know that didn't happen. That only happened about 12,000 years ago. So that's why they acknowledged, well, we might be 12,000 years old. Well, wait a minute. That means that there was people that lived on the earth prior to the flood. Well, then we might be a little bit older than that. Now we literally have stuff that dates back to more than 77,000 years ago that we're aware of. The Sphinx dates back to, according to most people who have investigated it, Robert Schoch and a few other people, that it is at least 128,000 years old. That it wasn't built 12,000 years ago when the pyramid was built. The pyramid was built about 12,000 years ago, but the Sphinx was already there. So they know this now. And the Sphinx was buried for most of the time. There's pictures of it from the 30s and the 40s when Napoleon went there and shot the nose off with cannons. It had been buried for probably 60,000 years, and it was literally up to the base of the neck. You could walk up and climb up onto the ear of that thing and on the nose of that thing until he shot off the nose with the cannons for target practice to prove that he was not afraid of the gods of Egypt and that he was in charge when Napoleon went there. But the pyramid was already there and above ground. Okay, it was already there and above ground, and he went into the pyramid and came out freaking out. Whatever it was that scared him to death when he came out, he was afraid. But he never spoke about what he saw in there, what he felt in there, or why he was afraid. He's probably just afraid of the dark. So in any case, there's a lot more older stuff going on this earth than anyone realizes, and science has made leaps and bounds since then, but they're being stopped by the controllers of this planet to keep people from figuring out what's going on in the past. So there's a reason that they're still trying to cover up the true history of the human race, and it doesn't have anything to do with aliens because they claim they're descendants of aliens, right? So they're already saying that out loud. So it's not that they're trying to keep us from realizing there was aliens here, because they claim to be an alien species, okay, with a bigger brain. Right, not a separate species of humans that was living on the earth that evolved here. They claim to be the Luciferians claim they came here in spaceships. Okay, so what happened to your technology? They don't want to talk about that. Your technology went away somehow. Well, they won't even say they crashed here. Bully. Okay, so water is a crystal. They're talking about telling Dawn about building up your defenses to put up shields to be able to defend against psychic attacks. This is why I stopped here to get you back up to that. But I wanted to make sure that you realized that the particles that you see, solids, gases, and liquids are not unrelated. Science was saying they're all separate. And current people are catching a lot of flack, like Terrence Howard, for claiming that one turns into the other and that they are stacked on top of one another in octaves. And I was already saying that. And there's a lot of other people that were already saying that for a long time in the scientific community, and nobody would listen to us when we were saying it. No one listened to me when I say it. I did a whole hour show on it back on 2021 or 2022 on Earth Day, and people just blew past it, like as if I was just making things up, but I was actually showing you with visuals, showing you how a particles stack on top of one another and how they're all related, and they just change in energy from one thing to another. And now you have Terrence Howard coming out and showing that on a computer and telling people, and you have a scientific community. Some people are agreeing with him, and some people are like, nope, not even, you're just making stuff up, and because they can't have it be that way, right? Because they don't want it to be that way. It doesn't make them any money, and there's some truth to it, and that's what they're trying to hide from everybody, as well as what's actually the knowledge, the secret to the universe as far as ascension. They can't have you knowing any of that stuff because they need you to stay a slave and stay stuck here on this earth, just recycling over and over and just living your life wanting clicks, likes, money, power, fame, glory and the like, just living, eating of the tree of life and living in this particular prison that they have constructed by usurping the matrix.
57.13 Questioner, is there currently any use for the pyramid shape at all that is beneficial? Ra, I am Ra. This is in the affirmative if carefully used. The pyramid may be used for the improvement of the meditative state as long as the shape is such that the entity is in Queen's Chamber position or...
Okay, before we go any further, I wanted to address what Rick was saying, because you're absolutely right, Rick. There has been a concerted effort. Rick said, let me put it up on the screen right here. He said, there's an indigenous Facebook group that keeps posting false information. They said yesterday that the Anunnaki came here and started stuff. There is a current draconian narrative that has been going on since Giorgio Tsoukalos wrongfully translated Zecharia Sitchin's wrongful translation of the word Anunnaki. And that is to elevate the Anunnaki. This is what Ra is warning about. It's the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders, to elevate the Anunnaki into our gods, our creator gods. So the first thing they did was Zecharia Sitchin, when he translated it wrong, and you can look this up, the scholars who understand that language, because they have found the dictionary written in cuneiform of the Mesopotamian language, they have said the word Anunnaki doesn't exist as a single word. It's two words. It's Anunna-ki. Zecharia Sitchin ignored the word Na, used the word Anu, and knew the word Anu from the Akkadians, the Greeks, who had a border that was almost 1,000 miles long with Mesopotamia at the time, and said they must be talking about the Greek god Anu. Na, not even translated, threw it out, left it there, but so you can see it, threw it out. Ki. Anu, God, comes. So they must be saying that a God came from heaven down to earth. 1948, that was the translation. Giorgio Tsoukalos, Prometheus, the History Channel ran with that in 2012. Giorgio Tsoukalos, knowing this for ratings, to sell the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, because nobody was buying any of the other stuff. And no. Don't think that I'm a UFO denier. I've been a UFO researcher since I was 8. If you've never been here before, I created and own Ancient Aliens Worldwide, the Facebook group that is currently keeps going up and down from 300,000 members to Facebook deleting about 70,000 of our members, and then us moving up to about 320,000 members, and then them deleting about 30,000. This has been going on for about 6 years now. They for whatever reason won't allow us to get over 300,000 and stay that large. But it is the largest UFO hunting group on the face of the earth that is not an individual website. So I'm not coming from a place of I'm trying to deny aliens existed, okay? But Giorgio Tsoukalos in 2012, then instead of saying the god Anu came down from heaven, he furthered that, purposefully misleading the audience, and said those from the heavens came. Okay, so now he's claiming that Anunnaki means the words "those from the heavens" came. Then, first, the words Anunnaki mean the god Anu came. So it doesn't mean a species. Never did mean a species. Okay, the actual translation is Anunna-ki. Anunna means royalty, not a god. Came. Okay, so the translation has never been a species of aliens that are called the Anunnaki. Giorgio Tsoukalos knew that and said those from the heavens came, and everybody just used the catchphrase Anunnaki as an entire species now. Okay? So first it was one god, Anu, wrongfully translated. Then it was an entire species, and then the name Anunnaki now means an entire species. Since 2012, I have watched and witnessed around the world people make changes. By 2017, Marduk was now called Marduk Anunnaki. The Anunnaki in 2017 was added to the Mesopotamian god pantheon. They just added it in there, and it became an official documentation by all the alien people around the world, not by the official people who study, archaeologists and the like, and scholars who study the Mesopotamians. That's still not part of the pantheon. And then it's becoming a religion. Then there's this concerted effort to say that the Anunnaki are our God creators. They took and inserted the Anunnaki and got rid of the people that were living on planet X that was called something else, and I can't think of what they were called. And those people were the ones that used to come back, according to a myth, every 3,500 years, and they should have been back here about 1,000 years ago. So they're late, and some people claim they're already here and they're hiding from us up in space. And then all of a sudden, that they became the Anunnaki. And the other people that they were called before that were that name in the pantheon was just erased from telling people about who's on that planet, which is weird because that planet still hasn't shown up, and they keep claiming that it's already here and it's being hidden by cloaking devices because they're so concerned that the human race is going to know about them because they've never been concerned. Every time they've come here, they've never been concerned, but weirdly, they don't gain any new technology and haven't for about 75,000 years. That's odd that they can't come back except for once every 3,500 years, and they don't have any advancements in their technology when they get here. Yet we, in the last 150 years, went from sailing boats with oars and riding horses, drawn carriages, to spaceships flying to the moon and smartphones and computers in 150 years. Imagine where we're going to be in 3,500 years from now. But this group of people doesn't have any advancements technologically at all in history. And they just keep coming back in the same spaceships every 3,500 years. And they still haven't solved the problem of their atmosphere needing more gold in the atmosphere. And they keep returning to mine gold from the earth over and over for the last 75,000 years with the same technology every 3,500 years. And I'm supposed to buy that shit. Okay. Just saying. So now you have, and Rick rightly talking about it, now you have people around the world that are claiming the human race didn't exist until the Anunnaki got here. Weird, because now the Anunnaki got here further back in time, and they're good people. I've seen people on Facebook and YouTube and all over that say the Anunnaki were the ones who came here and taught us agriculture and all of that, which is weird because that was Zeus and Apollo and the gods. So now the Anunnaki are taking over the Roman and the Greek god pantheon. So now those gods are becoming the Anunnaki. So now the gods of the Mesopotamians are the Anunnaki. Now they're replacing the Greek gods and the Roman gods as the Anunnaki, which means that they're also going to replace the Viking gods, because Georgios Tsoukalos told us that when the people in the Greek people were talking to their gods and they said, we have to leave to go and teach the Hyperboreans. And they're claiming that's who the Vikings were, according to the gods, were the Hyperboreans. And because they said to the gods, well, where are those? They live far up to the north. You've never met them. Okay, so now that the people up to the north who are the Vikings, they claim their gods taught them this stuff. So now they're going to take over all of the gods. So now Zeus, Apollo, and all the gods and all the Greek gods are no longer those names. They're Anunnaki people that were of those names. And now they're moving into the taking over the Viking gods too. So now Thor and Odin and Freyr, they're also Anunnaki according to them, which means that the Japanese gods and the Chinese gods will also be Anunnaki. The Hindu gods, Krishna and Shiva, they're going to be Anunnaki tomorrow or the next or a year from now. So pretty soon now it's going to be, there was no ever any other gods besides the Anunnaki. That's what's happening. And I see it taking, and these people are starting to tote this around the world that they were good people. Well, I remember back in 2012 when they were evil and came here and enslaved everybody and but wait, they also, people are making a fuck ton of money talking the narrative up about the Anunnaki. So it's not going to do anything but evolve into more and more money-making scheme, because like everything else, they're getting likes, they're getting clicks, they're getting paid, they're getting money. So you're going to see it. It's not going to stop, Rick. They're going to continue to go, right? So what's Rick saying here? He says, the name here at Uluru for the culture, let me put this up on the screen so you guys can see and I'll read it to those of you who are listening on the MP3 broadcast. You can't read that anyways, right? So their name at Uluru for the culture is, what is that? Osis. I can't even, I'm sure I'm slaughtering this, Rick. It's OIS, first word, right? OIS, second word, ANGU. So I guess that's a take on Anunnaki, right? Because it's similar. The second word is similar to the Angu, right? Anunnaki, right? Is that what they're going to try and say? Well, anyway, so it literally means people of the desert, 3,500 years since, but they believe that they are direct descendants of creation beings. It was a feature less land and they beings rose from the land, and then shapeshifters, man, plant, wind, animal, rock. They created the landscape across the country. So that's the same kind of creation story. I talk about that in my book. If you guys are out there, I haven't done a commercial for my book yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now because Rick just brought up a very good point right there about that, and I'll explain that. So let me get the picture of my book up here so you guys can see it. And I'll tell you about it. So in this book, it's called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. The reason why I put that accentuation there is every single person calls my book Reality of Reality, or they say The Reality of Reality. And I'm like, no, it's the reality about reality, not the reality of reality, right? It's the reality about reality, returning to the old ways by me, Leonard O'Neill. It's on sale worldwide online. You can look it up. I've looked it up and found it in 17 different countries that are not even English, let alone all the English-speaking countries around the world. And it is currently everywhere on the planet. I don't know if it's, I even saw it in Japan. I don't think it's in China. I don't think it's in any communist country because they don't allow any kind of spirituality or even the idea of aliens. And that book covers both. So in there, I talk about, I was just reading my own book, as a matter of fact, doing spell checks on it because there were a few things that I didn't catch and that apparently the editors didn't catch. There's been at least 3 that I found. One that was 2 that were completely obvious, and a third one that I could see that they would not understand that. It was the word understand, and it said understand, not understand is what I was supposed to have said, and somehow they translated that to understand, not understand, because whatever program they're using to edit it, because it wasn't a human reading line for line. I'll tell you that right now. It was a AI that was editing my book from my publisher because they didn't change a couple of words that were spelled right that were the wrong word in that place, like which do you use? And there was one that I've seen where the word in and the word in was right after it, so it doubled up in great AI fashion. Unless I typed it that way, because I might have typed in, because I've done that a couple of times where I meant to say in, and then I typed it 2 times because I stopped typing and didn't look down and typed it again. So that's possible, but I missed it in approving the editing, and apparently the editor missed it altogether, and we got it approved. I haven't finished the book, but I'm a little more than halfway of reading of my own book. So in there, I talk about exactly what Rick is talking about here, where he's saying that with this creation story, if you look at all religions and you ask what their creation story is, if you Google it, it'll say the creation myth, because Google is run by secularists who don't believe in anything spiritual. It doesn't exist because they're in service to self, not in service to others. But they talk about the creation, and in that creation, like we're seeing here, and I'll read that to you again, it's very similar. If you know anything about creation stories of Japan, the Viking creation story, the Hebrew creation story, just about every creation story, there's a very varied version, slightly varied, that is almost identical to this. So according to this, 3,500 years ago, right? Or more, right? So they believe that they're direct descendants of a creator beings, and it was featured, less land, and they belonged. These beings rose from the land, shapeshifters, right? Man, plant, wind, animals, rock. They created the landscape across the country. So the Viking, most of these people, including the Mesopotamian creation story. Marduk kills his grandmother, who is now evil because she was revenging her husband's murder by her own children, who she warned that her husband was going to kill them if they weren't partying, if they wouldn't stop partying and being loud and not letting him sleep. So they decided to kill their own father before, and they were all gods, by the way. And so gods can't die, but yet they killed each other. And then they say that Marduk, when he killed Tiamat, Tiamat's dead but not dead, and she's in the earth and she's sleeping. That was also the theme of most of the creation stories when you go back far enough. So Marduk is a dragon, and Tiamat kills her, and then they use her skull to make the night sky, and her teeth become the mountains, and her blood becomes the waters. And then in the Viking pantheon, you have Odin killing the frost giants, and one of the giants, I don't remember his name right now, but they killed him, and again separated everything into the heavens and the ground, and his teeth became the mountains, and his blood became the river, and the armpit, the cow came out of his armpit. Or was that the Japanese? Same thing with the Japanese. There was a giant that got killed, and then the islands of Japan became a place, and then the waters were the blood, and the sky was the dome of the skull. And so you have the same very similar creation stories around the world that have to do with everything. And even the Hebrew Bible of God created the heavens and the earth and the dome of the sky, and the pinpoints that are holes in the fabric of night that make up the stars, because they didn't believe that they were bodies, celestial bodies. They were in fact just holes that were punched in the sky, and you were seeing the light of the sun that was veiled by the darkness. Not that it was that they didn't understand that the planet is facing away from the sun, therefore it's dark. They didn't understand that. So these creation stories are all very similar. And then when that creation was varies. Some people say it was ancient times, but most of that is attributed to somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, with that would be coinciding exactly with the story of the flood and everybody dying off and no education being on the earth, and children now raising children, because the life expectancy of the average human was about 28. So nobody lived very long, and they just told stories to their kids. And these stories that they told were very similar. And if you look at the destructions of the earth and these people like Sutur and the destroyers, and then when you look at these scrolls that are found around the world about the destroyer of worlds, the destroyer of planets, and when you read it now, it seems that it was a comet, or it was another planet that is in our solar system that came flying in as a comet, got stuck in the Earth's gravitation or the sun's gravitational pull, and then was flying through the solar system in a different orbit until it locked itself in an orbit. And every time it came near the Earth, it was destroying people on Earth, every 6 months or every once a year. And there was all kinds of calamity until it settled down into the orbit that it's in now. Science is even starting to believe that maybe Jupiter or maybe Saturn or maybe even Mars were not part of our solar system originally, and the moon also wasn't. So if you look back at these things happening and say that something like that, either the destroyer of worlds was a comet that went by, everything about it says comet. If you read even the Colburn Bible, it talks about how loud it was, and if you have a near miss, it's going to create a sound as it goes by. And according to prophecy, we're supposed to have something like that happen here by 2032, when Apophis comes back. And every couple of years, we have a near miss by a couple of these different really big comets that they're not telling everybody about on this planet. And each time it seems to be getting closer and closer. That's why the theories about trying to divert a comet before it destroys the Earth created movies like Deep Impact and Armageddon, and Moonfall and the like, are all based on scientific theory from NASA talking about the idea that these comets are coming closer and closer, a couple of really big ones, and that they're coming back and they don't know if it's how close it's going to be. And then when they do talk about it, they go, well, it's not going to be close enough to do any damage to the Earth, just so you guys know. And so they're trying to quiet everybody down. But I know, being a scientist, that it is slowly moving closer, and they don't know if it's going to eventually, maybe not in our lifetime, it might be another 75 to 150 years from now, but it might hit the Earth. They don't know yet. So they're taking precautions now to try and develop and test possibilities to because they know that if they're not proactive now, and it does come back, say in 150 years or 200 years from now, and it's going to slam into the Earth, that no one will do anything and know anything about it and they'll be able to stop it. So they're trying to work on it now so that they can perfect things in the next 150 years for our great grandchildren or whatever when it does come. But it wouldn't take much, and this is why they really need to be on it, because as it's going around the sun and coming back to come near us again, what if something else slams into it when it goes through the Kuiper Belt and it changes its trajectory? It either will go away from us and we'll not see it again, or it might come closer to the Earth or come really close to the Earth. So science, because people like me, if I could think that shit up, that means NASA thought it up too. What happens if something hits it and it changes its trajectory slightly, and next time it comes by, it's going to fucking hit us? We need to be aware and be prepared for it. Okay, so so it's going to happen, and my point is, and a prophecy says that it will, and there's going to be something that's going to come through, and you're going to hear that loud roar that they actually talked about in the past of when the destroyer of worlds came here 3,500 years ago, when there was a comet that came, a near miss comet that was really big, that literally made this sound going ringing in the sky as it flew by. It was so close that we could actually hear it down here on the Earth. This has been described worldwide. And when you read these stories now, even the way they describe them, scientists go, that was a comet. That was a comet. So they called that a god, by the way. The Sutur, the destroyer of worlds, who was a god and the destructor in most nations around the world, was a god. Okay. And science is now saying it was not a sentient being. It was, in fact, a comet. Okay. That is exactly what the way a comet reacts, and what all of the outcomes of said comet would act to this Earth if it was a comet that came through. And then when they look back in time, they trace a comet that came by the Earth at that time, that has reoccurred several times in an orbit, that has been moving away from us slightly, not towards us, that when they track it back from its movement exponentially, it flew by here close enough to do a fuck ton of damage to the Earth at exactly the time that all of these stories were written around the world. So when you follow the science, it was a comet. We know which one it was. Okay. So you can look into that. I have. I'm a nerd. I do that kind of stuff. So the creation story, right? 35,000 years. I apologize because your number says 3,500 in what I posted up there, but you were saying, wait, no, it was 35,000. That's closer to the 75,000. Makes more sense too, by the way, Rick. But there is the theory that it was only 3,500 years ago, and it can't be right. Let me tell you why. You're right. It can't be, because Moses took place 5,400 years ago, and the scroll that is in the Colburn Bible is from before a time before that, which is even older than that, which means if that was 5,400 years ago, obviously it wasn't 3,500 years ago, because Moses was long since dead by 2,000 years, if it was 3,500 years ago. But I was just reading what you put up on the screen. But 35,000 years ago is far more accurate to one of the destructions, because we also know that 77,000 years ago, a meteor struck the Earth. That's the Younger Dryas. That's what destroyed everything, right? So we also know that further back, millions of years ago, another one, a big one, hit and destroyed the dinosaurs. So we do know that this has happened. So, we could have that happen at any time. Life is that fragile on this Earth that we could have a comet hit the Earth, a meteor smack into the Earth. We could have one come whizzing by and, hit the moon and break into a bazillion pieces and crack the moon and have that shit rain down on us. Who knows? This is a chaos universe. Come on, anything can happen. So worrying about it will have you hiding in a hole for your entire existence. It's just like when I was like 15 or 16, and I went with my father to, it might have been, no, I was older than that. I think I was 18. I was 18. We went to Yellowstone, and I saw the Old Faithful, and I was like, we're in the caldera of a volcano that's a super volcano. And the guides there were like, yeah. And I'm like, and it's overdue for blowing up. So at any moment, this place can erupt and kill all of us off. And they're like, yeah. And I looked at my dad. I'm like, we need to get out of here. This is venting. The Old Faithful is venting from this volcano, which means it's not dormant. It's active still. It's just not, it's not completely active. Otherwise, it would be lava. But it's not dead, right? So it's dormant. So, and now I'm 56, I'm going to be 57. So, right, it's been 30 years and it didn't erupt and kill off half the planet, but it's overdue. Everything in science is so overdue. They say it's overdue because they want money, right? If you listen to everything they said, the ice age should have been here 30 years ago. The acid rain should have killed all plants 35 years ago, 40 years ago. The oil was supposed to run out by 1995. We're still using it, still here. Then global warming, the ozone layer was going to be depleted by 1989, and we're all going to die from radiation from the sun. Weird, still here. Right. So everything that they've claimed, and then they went from, we were going into an ice age by the year 2000. We were supposed to be in an ice age. And then one day they went from, we're going into an ice age to the ice caps are melting and we're all going to boil and die and the sea's going to rise and kill us. And the sea is rising exponentially every year. Yet there's over in Africa, there is literal baths that the Romans 5,000 years ago carved out of rock that are literally touching the ocean, and the lapping of the ocean waves fills those up. And guess what? They're still exactly the same distance above ground that they were 5,000 years ago. But according to science, the ice caps are melting and the sea level is rising, and they're going to be gone. And the sea level is going to rise some 500 feet. And in 5,000 years, it's not even gone up an inch. But never mind that now. Never mind that. It's global warming and the sea is rising and we're all going to flood. Well, if what they said was true in 1981 or 1979, and the sea level should have risen according to the science at the time, the map of Florida would have Florida currently 3/4 underwater because the sea level was supposed to have risen. All of most of Louisiana, it should be swampland currently, and it's not. The entire eastern seaboard of the United States of America, including Maine, should be underwater currently. None of that has changed at all in the last 60 years. But they have claimed that it was all going to be underwater in 20 years. 40 years ago, it should have been underwater. What changed? Nothing. Okay. So that should tell you something, but they count on the fact that you have no idea that any of that stuff's around. So the creation stories, those of us who are theologists, we find them very interesting, Rick, to get back to the native Australian Aborigine creation story, because they're so similar across the earth, that some of science would say there must be some truth to some of them, or they all have been borrowed from one another, but they're different slightly, but they're very similar. So either there's something in the human psyche that the story, or it's based, the story becomes similar, or there's something that's based in the telling of that story, or everybody copied them from one another. So that's what a lot of people say about religion, is that they were all copied from an older scroll, but I don't believe that they were. And that's what I write about in my book. One more commercial, and then we'll get back to Ra. For my book, that's what I talk about in my book, in chapter 3, I think it is, where I talk about the ancient religions and the creation stories and how similar they are, but that it's not because they're all borrowed from one another, because the dynamic has changed. It's because there are people in the world that are unlocking and have been doing this throughout all of time that unlock the same exact information. And I'm telling you about that information, showing you in history that all these people in history were talking about that information. And that has been something that the Anunnaki, quote unquote, has been trying to take away from you. And the name of my book is The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. And that is up on your screen for you to see. And those of you listening on the MP3 broadcast, you can go on any search engine, whatever country that you're in, and it's currently on sale in that country that you're in, but it's not currently on sale in many different languages. We'll have that probably in the next couple of years. We'll have that out if it gets popular enough. I should say when it gets popular enough that we'll start translating that into other languages for you. But you can get it on Kindle or ebook and get it translated. And I'm hoping to get that out as well with different languages out there. But you can get it currently on the Kindle ebook, but not the audiobook. And I'm working on getting the audiobook out and getting the translator adapted to that so that you guys can buy the audiobook all around the world and then hit a button and have it in your language. Okay, so let's continue. I almost was about to hit on accident. I almost hit end live stream. All right, so let's continue with Ra talking about this same information about Carla being attacked and about the water being crystalline and crystals being crystalline and the structures being the same, and what their effect is when you cast light through them and push energy through them, because putting light through a crystal is pushing energy through a crystal, and that is the full spectrum of the light range, which you see going through water, making a rainbow is an example of what Ra's talking about. That light spectrum, because of it is all the chakras, in the spectrum of all the 7 chakras, what you see in the light spectrum from going through light going through water is the totality of, if you're trying to heal, you need all of that spectrum so that you get all of the chakras involved in whatever endeavor that you're using. And most people don't know that when they're trying to heal themselves or align their chakras or anything like that, that all of the spectrum is actually a necessity for, unless you're targeting one individual chakra to balance it. But if you're going to try and balance all of your chakras, you have to balance all of them. So if you try to balance one and the other ones are out of alignment, it's going to be hard to get that solidified and balanced properly. So you do have to balance all of your chakras to get one balanced perfectly and get all of them perfect balanced. So we teach that. I don't teach that in my book, because my book is more about information about the spirituality and the ascension and what's being done here to keep you from getting that information, and how you can find that actual information around the world, because it's right in front of your face. It's there for you to see. All right, let's continue.
Entities are in balanced configuration about this central point. The small pyramid shape, placed beneath a portion of the body complex, may energize this body complex. This should be done for brief periods only, not to exceed 30 of your minutes. The use of the pyramid to balance planetary energies still functions to a slight extent, but due to Earth changes, the pyramids are no longer aligned properly for this work. 57.14 Questioner: what is the aid or the mechanism of the aid received for meditation for an entity who would be positioned in the so-called Queen's Chamber position? Ra: I am Ra. Consider the polarity of mind/body/spirit complexes. The inner light is that which is your heart of being. Its strength equals your strength of will to seek the light. The position or balanced position of a group intensifies the amount of this will, the amount of awareness of the inner light necessary to attract the INS-teaming light upward, spiraling from the south magnetic pole of being. Thus this is the place of the initiate, for many extraneous items or distortions will leave the entity as it intensifies its seeking.
Wait, I want to pause it there real quick. Penny said, let me put that up on the screen. Penny said, I still need to learn how to balance, to align my chakras. That's actually the secret to the universe. That's actually the secret to this place. The most guarded secret currently by your controllers, those people, the Anunnaki, who think they own this planet, is keeping that information specifically away from you. Okay? That's literally what they tried to edit out of all the religions, is how to balance the chakras. And when I tell people that, they're like, yeah, that's not the information. It's not what the Bible says. Actually, it is. And I talk about that in this book, and I'm talking about it in the book that I'm currently writing, this book that just came out 2 months ago, and what I'm currently writing that will be out in a couple of years. I'm showing you in different places. And I talk about it in this book that if you go to Revelations in the Christian Bible, Revelation of Jesus, and you read the letters to the churches, if you literally get a piece of paper or pull up on the screen of your computer or your phone what the chakras are, starting with the red ray root chakra, moving all the way up to the violet chakra of your crown chakra, and learn or read what the red ray root chakra is, what it means, what it represents, okay, and what you would do to balance that chakra, and what happens if that chakra is blocked and you don't balance it. Then you read the letters to the churches, and don't assume that there are some church in some far off land in the city of Philadelphia or otherwise. And I'm writing about that in this book, showing you the actual translation from the Hebrew, from Sanskrit to the Hebrew to English, of what those churches, what the definition of those words mean, and what the definition of the chakra that coincides with that church is the same. So if you read the letters of the churches, there are 7 letters to 7 churches. There are 7 chakras, major arcana, red ray root up to the violet crown chakra. If you get the Bible out and read Revelations and get the chakras out, and you go red ray, first letter, yellow ray or orange ray, second letter to the churches, yellow ray, third, and you continue doing that, and you read what it says to that letter to the churches, and you read what it says that is what the chakra represents and what it is, then you realize that the letter to the churches is telling people, if you balance this chakra this way, this is what good will come of it. And if you don't, and you ignore what I'm saying, and you're bad and wicked, then I'm angry at you, and this is what will happen to you. If you read what that chakra is, and what you balance it, what happens when you balance it, and when it's out of balance, and what happens when it's out of balance, you'll find they coincide. So this revelation in the Bible, okay, that everybody's like, it's got to be something really crazy, and it's the secret to the universe. And then I tell people it's how you balance your chakras. They're like, yeah, that's not what it would be. And I'm like, why is that? And I've said this before. Well, because that's just crazy, bro. Oh, okay. So what exactly do you think that means then, the revelation, the letters to the churches? Well, this is something that's totally fathomed. It's crazy information, and it's only for people way long in the future that can understand that. You mean from 2,000 years ago when it was written to now? You mean way far into the future? Right? And so you're telling me that it should be something that's really crazy, that's the secret to the universe, and I'm telling you that it's the how to balance the chakras so that you can get out of here and go to heaven, and you're telling me that's crazy? It wouldn't be that because it's supposed to be something bigger and crazier, right? And if you've ever woken up for real and you're not woke and you're awake, you realize that everything is that simple. The moment you actually wake up, you will look at everything and go, how is it that I never saw this? It is the most simple thing in the universe. And then you'll look at everybody around you and you'll try to convince them. And those people who aren't ready to know this will say you're crazy and that you don't know what you're talking about and you're making it up and you're delusional. And then you'll find other people who know the same knowledge and you'll go, why don't they get it? And those people will tell you because they are not ready to, they cannot. But it's simple. It's right in front of their face. Yes, it is simple for you because you see it now. So when people like me tell you the revelation to the churches is literally how to balance your chakras so that your soul can ascend to heaven, people are like, yeah, that's not what it is. Can't be that. That's too simple, and that sounds crazy. Because that's already here on Earth. The people in the East talk about chakras all the time. Right, weird, because they believe that that's the way out of here. That's the way to heaven, is by balancing the chakras. So, yeah, but their religion's not right. So, because Jesus said the way to heaven is through me. Okay, so you have to go and find Jesus's body then and stick your head through his skeletal structure No, he didn't mean that. Okay, so he didn't. So he meant what then? I'm a minister, people. What did he mean? He meant through me. He meant by doing what he was telling you to do. So what was he telling you to do? I'm telling you, he was telling you how to balance your chakras. Nope, that's not what he was telling me to do. Then what was he telling you to do? He was telling me to be a good person and to love thy neighbor and turn the other cheek and to love God and obey God. No, he never said obey. There's no words by Jesus that said obey a God. Never said that. So what was Jesus teaching? What was the way Jesus was teaching you? He was teaching you to not be wicked, evil, and to be in service to others, not in service to self. Sounding familiar? So why would he be telling you to be in service to others and not in service to self, and to love God and honor God? And you're okay with that being what he was telling you. But if he was telling you that you need to be harmonious and balance your body by eating right, praying right, meditating right, living right, and being a good person, all of those things that I'm describing to you are what you would be doing if you were balancing your energy centers, chakras, in your body. Being in service to others, not being mean, nasty, evil, cantankerous, not raping and pillaging people, killing people, murdering people, stealing from people, lying about people, cheating on people, all of those things that evil people do. By being good, you don't think that changes your body and aligns you? He was saying to be upright. Well, what does being upright mean? It means not to be crooked. It means to be upright or centered or balanced. Those mean the same thing. So you're listening to a translation of something that was written in Sanskrit, then translated into either Coptic or Hebrew or Latin or Greek before it was translated into English for you to understand. And you're assuming that you know the definition of the words that are being written to you are the exact same definition of words that it meant 2,000 years ago when it was originally written down. And that those words haven't changed one iota in definition currently today compared to being translated 4 different languages before the one you're speaking currently. And yet, when somebody like me says Jesus had to be married to Mary Magdalene to be called a rabbi and teach in that religion at the time, which you can look up, you don't want to believe that. And then say, what is that based on? Well, the fact that Jesus called Mary his companion. Well, in the modern language, companion means buddy, pal, friend. Okay. In Hebrew, 2,000 years ago, that meant spouse. Look it up. Did not mean spouse. That was the word they used for husband or wife when Jesus was alive. And in that religion at the time, if you were 31 years of age, you needed to be married or there was something wrong with you. So you had to get married. Your marriage was arranged by your parents, by the way. So if all of that was happening at the time, how would they let Jesus even in the synagogue to teach if he did not have a wife and he did not have children or had children on the way? You can look all of this up. I'm not making it up. But see, now you don't want to believe that. But that's true for the time. So if that has changed between then and now, what makes you think that all of the words that you're reading now are identical in meaning to what they were then? Well, it's an approximation. That's the words that they tell you in the New Modern English translation of those words. That it's an approximation so that people nowadays, because it's the way people speak now. Okay. 40 years ago when I was a teenager, the word bad meant good. That's bad, bro. Dude, that's so bad. Dude, that's bad. Okay, so the word bad, which is a word that doesn't mean good, was taken for a short time in the United States to mean good. So was the word cherry. A cherry in the 70s meant a virgin, someone who's never had sex before. Then it became really good if something was cherry. Do you see? So just slang terms have changed words in 20 to 30 to 40 years or less. And you're going to tell me that there's been no loss in translation from Sanskrit or Hebrew to Roman, right, Latin or Greek, Coptic into English and then into modern English in the last 2,000 years? Okay. So I can't possibly know that and realize that the letters to the churches coincide with that, or that the plagues in Egypt, before they added 3, there used to only be 7 plagues in Egypt when Moses was talking to Ramses II about letting my people go during the Exodus. And then 3 other plagues were added on to that about 400 years after Moses. When they were writing it down, some people added it. Well, there was some other things that happened at the time too. So they added the plagues. Originally, there was only 7. Why do you think the 3 more plagues were added to that? Because it was fitting a narrative that they wanted and needed. There couldn't be 7. There had to be 10. Why? Because in the Hebrew religion, there are 10 arcana that make up the tree of life, not 7. Because there is 10. So then the tree of life doesn't mean the chakras then. So it can't be that. I talk about that in my book too. Chakras are 7 major arcana, but there is 12 total organs to the tree of life. And on including the Hebrew tree of life, they have actually made it to where there are 12 currently because they have discovered that it wasn't just 10. So they're adding on over the thousands of years. If you go back to the time of Jesus, in the history of the pantheon of chakras, they didn't know that there were 7 chakras then. In fact, the harmonic resonance of 3, 6, and 9 was not discovered until 1948, rediscovered by the world. And Pythagoras didn't know about it. They didn't know 3, 6, and 9. Okay? People don't realize it. They just assume everybody knew everything for the entire time. So the people who knew about the 7 chakras knew about those. Now, if you go back in time, I remember when people didn't know about the crown chakra. So in this lifetime, in the last 50 years, I'm 56 years old. In the last 45 years on this earth, there was not 7 chakras. They just learned the 7th chakra. But because it's already added, and most of you are not old enough to remember when there wasn't a 7th chakra, you don't know that there wasn't one outside of. And now I have a screensaver on my phone. Let me show it to you. I have a screensaver on my phone that literally, look, here, let's put it up on the camera. I don't know if you can see that color, but look, count those. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Now my phone turned off. Okay, indigo, and then look. Let me see if I can get the colors to come back again. I got it to come back a second ago. It won't do it. There it is. That's because it's going on. So, but look, there's one above the crown chakra. Is the right here? The crown chakra is right there, and there's a white light above that. There's 8 chakras there. Okay, so they're already starting to add the 8th chakra onto the 7th. Okay, and I have that specifically for that. I didn't create that. That's out there. So people are starting to add another chakra above here. So you have the 3rd eye chakra, the crown chakra, which is right above your head, and there's another one above that now that is now starting to illuminate to people in white. Why is this important? Why is any of this important? Okay, Kevin, welcome. I didn't realize you were there, brother. Most of the scientists, Kevin's talking now, so let's take a look. Oh, and then he's going to talk about CERN again. Well, let's talk about that. So first thing Kevin said here, most of the scientists said back in the early 20th century that Einstein was a fake, right? And that he even admitted that he made it all up Hi, Leo, by the way, right? Yeah. So, yeah, well, I back when it's funny that you say that. When I was in college, so we're talking about 1991. Okay. When I was in college, I was going to be a physicist, and I was in college, and I said Einstein's wrong. Einstein's theory of relativity is the only thing that was near to anything. And this idea of a tachyon, which we now, I think that Hawking called that dark matter, because they couldn't prove the ether. That would say that Nikola Tesla was also wrong, because he said that he assumed that ether was mechanical in nature and used that in his equation. So he was able to tap into a lot of crazy stuff. So he was right in his idea of how to tap into this information when he said, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. But ether's not mechanical, but it is a hologram. So if you look at the definition, here's where, like, the definition of words again. In the definition of what a hologram is mechanical. So he was right. So Einstein was wrong, and I said that when I was 18, 19. I said Einstein is wrong about his grand unified theories. E equals mc squared only works because it has to do with friction, right? So he's not wrong about that equation, but some people say his wife was the one who created that equation, and he didn't. So most of what he said, I thought, was made up at the time. So I agree with Kevin, that because he was saying that back in the day, in the 20th century, they said he was wrong. I said that then, and my buddy's father said to me, what makes you think you know what Einstein is saying and that it's wrong? So I said, you probably don't understand what I'm saying. He said, try me. I know a little bit about physics. I didn't realize that he was actually a professor of physics, and that he was that's what he did for the federal government. He was a lifer in the Navy. And I didn't realize that he was really high up in the Navy, and he had just retired, and that he was a physicist, until after I had said what my theory was. And he looked at me and he says, how do you know this? Do you have any idea? And I said, well, I don't have the applied, but let me give you the theory behind it. And he was like, wow, that's actually very compelling. And that was at the time when, not too long after that people were saying, and maybe Einstein made that crap up. Okay. So I agree with you, Kevin, and you're old enough, because I think you and I are pretty close in age. We've talked about that before. Okay. So then you went on to say, right, what's happening with the Hadron Collider at CERN? Apparently they're trying to open portals to entities to come in from a different dimension that we know nothing about. Well, they've been trying to do that forever. If you read literally, I had a copy, and I can't find it. I had a copy of the Necronomicon because Kevin, I don't know if you and I've ever talked about this, but there's like 5 or 6 different copies of the Necronomicon that are out there, at least 3 or 4 that I'm aware of, that are different from one another. And there's one that attributes back to Nebuchadnezzar far more, and it has to do with a lot of necromancy and going into a cave and finding this glowworm and eating it and being able to get control of demons through necromancy. And part of that story that was written was about a map out in the desert and Nebuchadnezzar talking about this stuff. Or was it Nebuchadnezzar? I'm confusing now. No, it's a different name. I can't think of the name of the person now. But he was the one that they got, that Leary got the information from, and that Lovecraft got the information from an ancient book. And there was a city under a city under a city somewhere out there in the desert in Iraq. And down there was a technology and a story about how the Atlanteans cracked the crystals of the earth when they destroyed themselves. And at the time, what they were doing was exactly what people are saying that CERN is currently trying to do. And there's a movie that was made by what's his name? I can't think of his name right this second. See, I'm going from spirituality to movie making now. By the guy that made Ghosts of Mars. What was his name? He made Ghost of Mars, and he made a vampire movie, and I can't think of his name right now. But I'm getting opposition to telling you this. Wow, This is information that you can know. So literally Lovecraft talked about, let me go to that and I'll get back on track here in a minute. Talked about how they cracked all the obelisks and cracked the sky and cracked everything, all of the crystals on this earth, and why the crystals are all cracked. And you can rarely find crystals unless you get a large amount of crystal that does not have cracks in it and imperfections. They were working, and they tell in that story, unless I was in a different timeline, they tell of the story of these people thousands of years ago in Egypt, and that all of the obelisks around the world were united, and they all transmitted energy to each other. So there was free global energy on this earth. And the Atlanteans were screwing with 3, 6, and 9. They were screwing with the energy, frequency, and vibration of the earth. And that they were trying to bring, and I know the movie now, but I don't remember the name of the guy who made it, and I'll think of it in a minute, that they were trying to open a portal to bring this great evil through into this reality, okay? And John Carpenter made a movie called The Prince of Darkness that you should watch, which tells of that story. It's based on the ancient story that Lovecraft and Leary put down to the Necronomicon, that is from this ancient book that they knew about, that told of this time when they were trying to bring this person in. And from that is based the Prince of Darkness. And in that, the church in Rome, the Christian church, got a hold of and imprisoned the devil inside this big giant vat of swirling goo. And they have it, and they've been moving it from place to place and guarding it for the last 5,000 years or 10,000 years. And it ended up in downtown LA in a church in downtown LA in modern time. And the movie came out about 25, 30 years ago. In modern day United States, and the priest, who was a secret order who was protecting this thing down in the archives, down in the catacombs of this church in downtown LA, died before he was able to transfer the key to the door and the secret of that information to the next priest. And when they found him dead, they found the key and unlocked the door. And people started trying to figure out what was going on, and they called this scientist from the college in the University of LA, or the University of Berkeley at Cal Berkeley at LA, and he brought a bunch of people in to figure out what this vat was and what was going on. And in fact, the devil was trying to possess everybody, and still trying to then open up this portal in a mirror to bring his father into this realm. Okay, so this is an ancient theory, Kevin, that goes all the way back to Nebuchadnezzar thousands of years ago, that has been told throughout time. And the last time that anyone has a copy of this book was in one of the copies of the Necronomicon. Most of them don't have that in every copy I've bought since then. I have a copy. I don't know if it's here. Out here on the table, but I think it's in my office in the bookcase. Every copy of the Necronomicon that I buy isn't that one. And I had that back in 2012, and when I moved to Arizona, it didn't make it with me, and I haven't been able to find it since. And I read it, and I was like, this is the one that everybody talks about that's really rare to find. So I'm still looking for it, and when I do, I'll buy another copy of it, and I'm going to talk about it on air if I do. Because what I believe, because I've heard the same theory, Kevin. I hope you're still here, because you haven't made a comment since I brought that up. So maybe you left. Hopefully you're still here. No, because you just said hi, Denise, a second ago. So you're still here. About 10 minutes ago or 9 minutes ago, you said hi, Denise. So I have heard that same theory, that they're still trying to do the same thing. Because if they are, in fact, Luciferians, Okay, because all these people say that they're descendants of Lucifer and they're part of this Luciferian team who came here in a spaceship. That would be Atlantis. Not all of the people, because Thoth was not one of the evil people from Atlantis, but that's the war of the gods and the civil war between the good people and the evil people from Atlantis. When the evil people were coincides with what Lovecraft and Leary talked about from this ancient scroll of the time of the cracking of the fabric of space-time and stopping the Earth from spinning on its axis, or from spinning, and it flipped over on its axis and flipped back upright, and everything has been fucked up ever since. And all of the crystals cracked. And so when people say that Lovecraft and Leary just made that up, it's weird that it actually coincides with actual things that are foretold from the past in scrolls that I have read separate from Lovecraft. In fact, most of the spells that I have read that are in the Necronomicon are in fact real spells from ancient writings that I've read from Dead Sea Scrolls and other scrolls. Okay, so that means that Leary had read the same scrolls from the Mesopotamian scroll. Okay, so, and that was around in 1948. We know that because Sitchin translated the Anunnaki word from the Mesopotamian scroll in 1948 when we found it in the Dead Sea. So that means Lovecraft and Leary were alive then. So the information that they put down after that, everyone said was just made up from these religions. Well, I've read the Enuma Elish, and when I read the H.P. Lovecraft, the Necronomicon, the spells that are in there are the exact spells that I read from the Mesopotamian scrolls. Okay, so that means that they were copying part of the scroll, and they claimed that it wasn't the entire scroll. Well, I've read the entire scroll, and I know that that's a portion of it. So they didn't make that part up. So if they didn't make that part up, and I read this about this ancient civilization that lived here that had space flight, and that they had a civil war that coincides with the civil war of Atlantis at the exact same time that the Romans and everyone around the world talked about the flood, the deluge, and what caused it, cracking of the structure of the earth, fire raining down from the sky, the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, then rising in the west and setting in the east, then rising in the east and setting in the west in a 3-day time period. The only way that can happen is the earth flips over on itself and then flips back upright for the planet to stop spinning and the crust to move and everything to get screwed up and the ice caps to switch and floods and everything that they talk about in the Necronomicon coincides with actual events in history that happened, and it's been foretold separate from the Necronomicon that our scrolls are out there of these events happening around the world in history by many more than one culture. So when people say that they completely invented the Necronomicon, it's the same as saying Jesus was invented by the Romans to control the Jews. Then they had to have been bigger geniuses than anyone could imagine, because what they concocted actually took place on this earth. So if that's true, my point, Kevin, is, and he's like, yes, I'm still here. So if that's true, then what you're saying that you've heard, that I've also heard about CERN trying to do that, would still coincide with Luciferians being in charge of this planet, going backwards in time to who their lineage is, and to exactly that event by their great, I don't know how many greats that would be, to go back 10,000 years or so, to go back to the deluge, which was what we were talking about, that was somewhere between, possibly as far back as 35,000 years ago, Rick was talking about from Australia, from the Aborigines, that everyone else is talking about, including the Egyptians and the scrolls that left with Moses and all of the Jews that have now ended up in Scotland, and that they have copies of it that they've added to the Colburn Bible that talk about the same destroyer of worlds, that talk about the same thing happening, Thoth, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and what the date of that is, and if you've read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and then what Hermes wrote about after that, that go back, and the Egyptians claim that Hermes, a lot of people now, they claim Hermes was Thoth, but if you go back and you talk in antiquities, they say no, that Hermes had the emerald tablets, and that was from, it thought, the Atlantean, and that well, maybe he was the same soul reincarnated. That's very possible, because Jesus in the Jesus Factor happened to 11 times prior to that with the exact same things that Jesus did. So if you'd say that the Jesus human, the soul in the human body, was the same soul, it is not unlikely that Hermes was one of those guys, and so was Thoth. And if that's the case, then the same person has come through 12 times on this earth to give us good information on how to find our way to heaven. But there's also, on the other side of the coin, evil people that have come through that are trying to bring somebody really nasty and evil into this dimension, across dimension. And everyone tries to say that, well, that's just from hell to here on earth. But what if it is from another dimension that is similar to this one, where some great retractor, some evil person is ruling there, and they're trying to open up a portal to get that person out of that prison and into this freedom of this world? And then when you look at the Hebrew, Western Judeo-Christian ideology of the Hebrews, the Muslims, and the Christians, that they all foretell that this planet is a prison where it is hell, where the devil is locked up in, and that devil is supposed to be released on the earth for a time, which suggests a beginning and a middle and an end, and that currently we're in the time when the devil is ruling this earth. That also coincides with all of these things, when they were taking place, when they are taking place now, when they did, when they are, and when they will, the beginning, the middle, and the end, that also coincide with the same legend of somebody evil trying to bring somebody that's in a prison, physically in or on this planet, out of that prison. And now we have rumors that CERN is doing exactly that. Is that based on those theories from people reading the Necronomicon, and it's not actually being done by CERN or the Luciferians? Or are these legit whistleblowers that are telling us of a storyline that goes back thousands and thousands of years, that was part of a civil war, part of a destruction, possibly two destructions of the earth, that we're currently coming out of again with our technology? I can't tell you the answer to that. I could, but you probably wouldn't believe me anyways. But I would suggest that people have been trying to tell you that same story over and over. So I would say that, without trying to create fear in everybody, there's a very good possibility that is exactly what CERN's trying to do. And they're also trying to take credit for these timeline dilations that they're not having, that is not them. Most people freak out when there's a time change in the temporal war, and that something shifts, like I talked about at the beginning. You weren't here yet then, Kevin, but I've been watching the news because the Democratic convention has been going on this week, and everybody is saying, including Fox, that Kamala Harris is the first female candidate for the presidency of the United States. And I'm like, okay, unless there was a time shift. In 2016, there was this woman who used to be the first lady called Hillary Rodham Clinton, who ran against Donald Trump and lost. So unless she's got a penis and some nuts, that they're claiming now that she was a transvestite this whole time, but they claim that about Barack Obama's wife, but not about Hillary Clinton, then Hillary Clinton was the first female candidate running for president. Now, if they would specify and say she's the first black female candidate running for president, I would say, okay, I'm just mistaken, but that's not what they're saying. They're saying the first female candidate running for president. Like Hillary Clinton ran for president and lost, and hasn't shut up about that somehow Donald Trump stole that election. And then, of course, when Donald Trump says that, then all of a sudden he's out of his mind and evil and a denier. But then when you point out that Hillary Clinton went ahead and said the same shit, and so did Stacey Abrams to this day, who lost an election 4 years ago and claims that she won that election, that's different somehow than when Donald Trump did it. But Hillary Clinton ran for president, in my memory, and lost to Donald Trump. So I would love for somebody to tell me who Donald Trump beat in 2016 to become the president of the United States, if it was not the first female candidate for president. So if there was a change, but there has been changes that they call the Mandela effect. And everyone says that's CERN trying to cover that up. I know for a 100% fact that none of those time changes is anything CERN's doing. And they're shitting themselves when those happen because they don't know who's doing them or why. They actually do know who's doing them and why, but they don't want to admit to the world that somebody's doing them and why, because they don't want anybody to know that there is a war going not just in time, backwards and forwards in time and current, but there's also that temporal war. If you look up the word temporal, doesn't just mean time, it means dimension. So dimensionality, reality, and time. Okay, so the changes that are happening that are called the Mandela effect are not being done by CERN, but a lot of people want to like freak out and go, oh, it's CERN that's doing it. No, it's not. I'll tell you that it's not, because I know, because I'm part of the team who's working to fix this, because there was a time shift when they did evil shit to the planet and cracked the earth and flipped it over on its axis. And that's why they were stranded here, because there was a civil war and they lost the civil war and the good people left with the spaceships and stranded the Luciferians down here with zero fucking technology. And they've been stuck here ever since. They had to breed with humans, but they have controlled the world, and their descendants are in charge in every country and have been for at least 5,000 years and possibly longer. And that's been proven in 2017 by the Above Majestic, and that was based on a little girl that they didn't know anything about, who proved that Barack Obama was related to every president in the history of the United States except for one, and Donald Trump is related to them, and so is Hillary Clinton, by the way. They're cousins. And then they extrapolated from that and said, how far does that go? In 2017 or 2016, 2017 was when the documentary came out, Above Majestic, and they showed you in there that all of them are related, and that goes all the way back to the Atlanteans, the Luciferians, the elongated skulls that they've been trying to hide. So these people have been stranded here, and their DNA has been bred out because the human DNA is a stronger DNA. So they did not create us, because if they did, they would have made sure that the DNA of the monkey living on Earth is not stronger than theirs, and they would still have the elongated skull and the large brain that they claim they have, which they claim, the Illuminati, the Anunnaki, the Luciferians, claim that it gives them a higher IQ. Yet, none of them have a larger than average large skull compared to their ancestors 1,000 years ago did and do. So that means that the human DNA, the monkey DNA that they created, is somehow the dominant strand and has bred their genes out. So that tells anyone in a scientific way that the Anunnaki did not create the human race, because we would be a subspecies, and if they bred with us, they would not breed their own DNA out because they would be superior like they claim. The fact that they have been stranded on this earth for about 10,000 years, and you cannot tell the difference between them and us anymore, except for they claim the lineage because they've been writing it down, but their IQs are no bigger than anyone else's, okay? But they claim that they do have a superior IQ, and I'm telling you they don't. And I'm telling you that when you look at those people, they do not have any things that make them that much bigger. Why? Because you're looking at one. My DNA is their DNA. My ancestor was the king, had more claim to I have more claim to the throne of the UK than the people that are in that. I am a bloodline O'Neill and have traced my DNA back over 1,000 years. Okay. Back to the year 990. That's actually 1,200 years ago. I can trace my DNA back that far, and I literally go through ruling the UK to do so. Henry V usurped the throne because he was a direct descendant of the sister of Edward Longshanks. I'm a direct descendant from Edward, proven through Ancestry.com. But because there was no one that they considered alive at the time, because my family was in hiding from them because they were trying to kill us, hunting us so that they could take the throne, Henry V took the throne and went to war against his uncle with his other uncle after his father died. Okay? And you could look that up in the history, or you could look it up in the books done by what's his name, the poet, and you can see that happened in real life. So the people who are in charge currently have less of a claim to the throne than my DNA. And I'm telling you, okay, that do I look like a elongated skull person, right? So because I'm not in service to self, I am not one of those people. Okay, and they tried to recruit me when I was a kid to become one of those people. Okay, but I'm not. Okay, now do I have a larger than most people IQ? Yes, I do. But and it is DNA. But I'm more human. I've done my DNA test. I'm more Homo sapien from this earth than I am any other DNA. Although all of us have this what they call junk DNA in us. Okay. So all of us have alien DNA that we haven't identified yet. But that doesn't mean that it's Anunnaki DNA, because if that DNA is not junk, it should have been the strongest DNA if they were the creator gods. Why would you create, why would you create if you were a species that came here and you needed slaves and you saw some primates, the gorilla, and you were like, if we add some of our DNA to that gorilla, we can make a worker bee that's not smart enough to resist us, and they'll do what we tell them to do. And you did that, then you left for a while because your planet was moving out of the space to where you would be able to reach it with your limited technology, and you'll be back in 3,500 years, and oddly, you don't advance at all as a civilization in 3,500 years, and they supposedly have come back like 8 times, which is 8 times 3,500, and none of those times did they ever advance in their spaceships to be able to fly back and forth to their planet in any great distance. So when it got a certain distance away, they all had to leave to go back to their planet so that they could ride it out to come back 3,500 years later and come here once again to the earth. That's a consensus from everybody around the world to talk about the Anunnaki. Yet they keep coming in the same rickety old fucked up ships that they had 3,500 years ago, 8,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, to get the same material that they need, that they keep harvesting from Earth, which is gold, because they have screwed up their atmosphere and haven't figured that shit out in 50,000 years of how to survive in an atmosphere. Why didn't they just move here? Why didn't they move here, and why didn't they leave people here? Because you would think if we have everything that they need and they're superior to us and they came here, why wouldn't they just fly everybody from their planet to Earth and take over here instead of coming up with this idea of we're not going to live here, but we want the gold, and so we need to create a species, and we're not smart enough to then kill that species off because we won't be back for 3,500 years, and they might actually advance and be able to in 3,500 years, we don't know where they're going to be in 3,500 years, but they're stupid because we've made them so stupid that they can't advance. But yet our species in the last 150 years have the same space travel that they had when their planet was close enough to get here the last time. But we're supposed to believe that, well, that only happened because they're here and they're making us make this technology. Really? That's weird. That means they don't have anything but this rickety ass shit that's here. So that means that they haven't advanced at all in 3,500 years. That means they don't have the ability. So they're not as fucking smart as we are. So you would not create a species that is stronger than you are, that left to its own devices, or if you got stranded here and you had to breed with them, would breed your DNA out if you're the one that created that DNA. Because if that DNA was created from yours, it would never breed you out. So are we to believe that the primates on this earth have a stronger DNA sequence than the Anunnaki? If so, they're nothing but a bunch of fucking monkeys to begin with. And they are not intelligent at all, because if they were, and they had the wherewithal to be able to create a human species, this one, they would then have the technology to be able to not have their planet be depleted in their ozone layer and need gold to put in their atmosphere. And they would also have the technology to not lose their DNA if they bred with the people that they created out of their own DNA. So none of that theory holds up under scrutiny if you're not a child. that there's this Anunnaki that created the human race, and that they keep coming back every 3,500 years with the same rickety ass fucking ships they had 3,500 years ago, because they can only get to us when they're within a certain distance of the Earth, and they're never advancing to have new technology in 3,500 years. But we, in 150 years, went from driving horses, pulling a fucking buggy, to flying to the fucking moon and going to Mars. Okay, so if they don't show up now, and they come back in another 3,500 years, when they get here, we're moving to their planet, and we're going to take control of them if they come here in the same rickety ass shit that they had 3,500 years ago. Because in 3,500 years, if we're still alive, we're going to be fucking light beings and not give a shit whether they're here or not. We're going to be gone off this planet, because we're going to be moving out to the stars, and we're going to come find their ass and take them over. So that theory doesn't hold up under any scrutiny by someone who has a brain. So all these people who are pushing CERN, having this technology, they don't know what they're talking about. They're children, and CERN would have you believe that they have this information, but they could be trying. They could be trying to crack open a portal to travel across dimension, because some people did come here doing that. The Greys, a couple of the species of Grey, according to insider information. So they also, the Greys who came here, didn't have the ability to go back. So it could be them that's behind this scenario and propping up what's going on, that's doing this. But, but again, that says when the Greys got here, they're not as advanced as they fucking claim to be, because they did a one-way trip and they're now trying to figure out how to fucking get home. So the same thing about all of this. So no matter how you look at it, they're third dimensional species that have flight. That's it. That's all they are. They're no different than us. They just went flying from one planet to the next, which we're already capable of doing. We're less than 50 years from flying to Mars and setting up camp out there. They're already talking about doing it on the moon, terraforming the moon and setting up bases. And some of us know that there's already bases on the moon and on Mars, and they're just trying to catch up so they can go, look, now we can say, look, we have bases on the moon. And they'll just say, well, you guys weren't looking. We created a base over here. I hear tell China already has a base on the dark side of the moon. You know what I mean? So let's already assume that since 1938, we already had bases on the moon, and they're just trying to roll it out to people. So if we had all this technology already, then why are they still trying to do this cross-dimensional thing? To what end? Unless there is some great retractor somewhere that they're trying to open it up to bring it in. But the things that are happening down here that are changing the time, that are the Mandela effect that they're so hard pressed to tell you is just people's minds. It's not them trying to cover it up. They're trying to cover it up because they're scared shitless because they're not doing it. Because we are fixing what was done that damaged this place by those assholes, the Anunnaki, when they were here. And they've been long since gone, and their descendants who were stuck here are long since brought out. Okay? To the point where people don't even recognize their DNA. Their own relatives don't recognize them. So if they were to get on board a ship right now and fly to where the Anunnaki is, they would see invading army from Earth. They would, wait, no, I'm your DNA. Bullshit. You don't look anything like us. You don't have our DNA. No, test my DNA. There's some in there. Yeah, the little bit left. You were a monkey that was bred in. So if it's true, they don't want us, and we're derelicts once again, and we just have an eighth strand of DNA added to us. That's it. So all of this high and mighty crap that they try to preach, that they're a superior race, they got stranded here by their own people, marooned here. That's the prison colony. They were the prisoners, and they didn't have any fucking technology, and they've been desperate for the last couple thousand years to develop it again. Okay? And that's what they've been working at doing, because they're still pissed off, and they want to be able to go out to the stars, find their ancient grandparents and great-great-great-grandparents who stranded them here and wage war on them because they're pissed because they've been stuck here with the fucking monkeys the entire time. But that fucking monkey has bred their DNA out, so they're not even going to be recognized anymore. They're just emulating the Orion Crusaders, which people call the Anunnaki. Those people got here at a different time. Okay, they even referred to those people who everyone refers to as the Anunnaki as the old guard. So either the people who got here in 1948 are the Anunnaki, or they're not. So who's the old guard then? If the new ones that got here in 1948, then that means that the Anunnaki weren't here 50,000 years ago. So if the Luciferians and the Anunnaki were supposedly the ones who started the human race, then they're what this new invading army that got here in 1948 call the old guard. They're dead, dying, and long since gone, and their DNA is hardly anywhere around, and everything that's still in this sector of the universe is automated, according to the CIA of this country currently. I did 23 episodes on it a few years ago. I should do it again. I should get that video again and do some more episodes talking about it. Okay, so their theories don't add up, and they're combining different events from different times and telling a story that they're trying to push a narrative that they're in charge and how they're in charge, and they just keep renewing it with the next wave of invasion that comes here. And they try to integrate that story into their prophecy, into their story. But something did happen at a time when there was people who did come here, but those people ran for their lives when my people got here to kick their ass. Talk about that in my book. I'm going to promote that, and then I'm going to go because it's 5:30, right? Yeah. So we'll pick up where we left off here next time. So the reality about reality, returning to the old ways, telling the information that I just talked about and that Kevin was bringing up. I talk about that in there. I call them the controllers. Because if I didn't, and I said like I did here, Anunnaki and Luciferians and all that, that book would already be banned from fucking all of their secular controlled websites. Okay, so I call them the controllers. And the knowledge that they've been hiding from you and the knowledge that they've been using against you to keep you here and what you need to know so that you can stop them from being in control is in that book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. You should look it up. It's on sale worldwide, online, currently. I know this because I found it in many, more than 10 different countries, websites I found it on, and everywhere in Europe, and meaning Northern, Western, Southern Europe, on every single country. So other than Russia, the entire Northern Hemisphere, the North American continent, Central America, South American continent. I have found it everywhere, including Africa, including the Philippines. So there is nowhere on this earth that book that you're seeing on your screen, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways, is currently on sale. And it talks about that very thing and what's going on and what you need to know to actually ascend so that you can wake up, pierce the veiling enough to realize how to reach up that other 1% from almost halfway that's at the Sistine Chapel with the hand coming down and the other hand coming up. And that the interpretation of all the Bibles and religions currently left on this earth have been controlled by the Anunnaki, which you guys call the Anunnaki, have been controlled by them to keep you from this knowledge. All gods and all religions that were already on this earth when they got here became the evil people, the serpents, the everything, the birds, everything became evil, and only they are the controlling factor and they are the creator. And that's the modus operandi that Ra is warning you about of the Orion Crusaders. That's how they invade countries. That's how they invade planets. That's how they invade solar systems. That's how they invade every sector of the universe they move into. Okay, they show up and either say there's this evil empire that owns you and you're unaware of it and we're here to save you, or there's this evil empire that's coming here and we're here to save you because we got here first. And if you let us come down and get boots on the ground, we'll save you. And then they take control. Or it's the vampire knocking on the door. You have to invite them in because of free will, which was done in 1948. Or they come down and say, we're your creator gods. So they get here, they change the narrative, and then they paint this picture. That's the temporal war. I've described that. And I don't remember if I described that in my book. I'll find out when I finish it, because I wrote it over a year ago. So it took a year, almost a year to get that from beginning of me writing it. It took more than a year to get it published. Sometimes I wonder exactly, that's why I'm reading it myself. How much did I actually put into this book? How much knowledge did I actually tell these people? So so the knowledge that was taken from you and controlled was the knowledge of all of that, how you get out of here. And that's what they've done. They get here, and their modus operandi is they get here and they change things. They tell you they created you, and they get you convinced. And so the way it works when you get boots on the ground is you have to have a past, a present, and a future. So if you come from a place outside that time, when you land here, you have to have a past. So that allows them to change things in the past. That's the temporal war. You guys don't know that that's how it works. So if you come from outside of time and you come down here, then you can change time. And that's what they do. So they have a footprint that goes back further than when they actually got here. Okay. And that allows them to make changes in history. And that's what they did. So it looks like they got here 125,000 years ago. That's not what it actually looks like, but it looks like they got here a long time ago and they didn't get here that far back. But their residual changes goes backwards as well as forwards in the time continuum. And that is the weirding way or the quantum weirdness of the time continuum that you guys are unaware of here and most people don't understand on this earth. And so because of that, they rewrote history, and so their ancient stories are telling you about these creator gods, and they insert that information just like they did with telling Zechariah Sitchin that the word Anu meant and that it was not Anu, Na, Ki, 3 words, that it was Anunnaki. And he didn't think it was Anunnaki, 1 word either. He thought it was Anu, didn't translate the word Na, and the word Ki. So according to what everything is based on, Zechariah Sitchin said the god Anu came. What's the word Na? Never mind that, he never translated it. So that was in 1948. So Anu, the god, came to earth according to him, and that's been proven that he was wrong. That it was actually the word Anu-Na, 1 word, Ki. Ki is come, he was right. Anu-Na doesn't mean the god Anu, it means royalty. Okay? Royalty came to town and taught them stuff, not an alien race. Everyone claims that's what it means. It became an alien race in 2012 when Giorgio Tsoukalos was filming the Ancient Aliens and they needed ratings, and he didn't use the same translation of the god Anu came to earth. He said those from the heavens came to earth. Those, a species. Then it became 1 word, Anunnaki, meaning a race of people called the Anunnaki. And since then, the 12 years since then, it has turned into a religion. It has turned into an alien species that has taken over from 3 or 4 alien species, and it is now consuming all gods from the earth in every religion for the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Iranians, the Iraqians, the Muslims, the Hebrews, and the Vikings. They're slowly changing the narrative and saying those gods were actually the Anunnaki. And it's all these same people in the Ancient Aliens group of people that are doing this. Because why? It sells tickets and it's making money. There is nothing in history that tells that. And the one thing that they claim that is the Anunnaki has been foretold by the people who are the scholars of that language, that what they're saying is untrue, but they will not allow that. And the people who own the History Channel, own ABC, Disney, and everybody else, they won't let that play on any of their platforms because they're making a fuck ton of money off of it. Nobody would show up to all the alien cons around the world if that narrative went away, because that's what everything is based on. I know this because I've been a UFO hunter since I was 8, and I'm my group, Ancient Aliens Worldwide, and you know, Kevin, because you're in like 6 of those same groups that I'm in. All of those people are in all of the groups that you are in, that I am in, and that I created, and that you were part of, right? Kevin knows that. Denise knows that. I think Penny knows that. I don't know how many of the rest of you are in the Ancient Aliens groups around there, but I know Kevin is. He's in every fucking alien group just like I am. And guess what? All of the people that film those shows are in all those groups. They're making money off of all that fan base. They're making a lot of money. It's $1 trillion, $100 billion a year money maker around the world to sell tickets to the Alien Con all over as it tours, to sell tickets to ratings on television. Gaia TV, most of the people who left Gaia was because they were saying it was draconian. because it was owned by these Luciferians, the rich 1% eliters. So the narrative they're driving is that our creator God is the Anunnaki, and that they are in fact all of the gods. They're changing the story to make it that there are no gods. First it was those are all evil and they're not true. Now they're literally, once they said it was evil and not true, and they're controlling that, not letting anyone dig up anything anywhere around the world, they go and get themselves in control of it and make it a place they sell tickets for people to go and watch, but nobody does any more excavating anywhere in the world. Pumku, everywhere. Everywhere that has been told is, hey, we think this is a alien site, they get control of it, and then they set up shop and sell tickets to it, and they don't let anybody dig anymore. Around the world, go and look. So they're controlling the narrative, not allowing anyone to discover anything else about those people from 77,000 years ago and what they were trying to warn us about. Why? Weird. And yet they're keeping it exactly the way it is, and they're adding it to the list of sites where everybody goes on tour that they make money from, that sells tickets to the Alien Con, that keeps Ancient Aliens, the History Channel, on the air, that keeps Gaia, the entire network, on the air, that keeps all of the money flowing uphill to the 1%, who are in fact Luciferians, who trace themselves back to the Atlanteans, who claim they're descendants of Thor and Odin and all of the gods of Egypt. So if they claim all these gods aren't real, then why is it that they claim they're descendants? The queen, who died not too long ago, last year, she claimed that she was Beowulf's descendant and Thor's descendant. Yet officially, these same people say that religion isn't real. Then why would they claim descendant of them? Because they need God status. Because they used to tell people they were gods until people stopped believing it. There are still, in fact, 10 countries on this earth whose people living there believe their leader is a god. Look it up. Okay? Look it up. In the modern today era, believe they are gods, not descendants of gods, gods. Okay? 1,000 years ago, almost every monarch was a god, according to their people. Not just because they worshiped them, because they believed they were gods on earth. The pharaohs were gods on earth. The Caesar in Rome was a god on earth. Not just a man elected, a god. Okay? So you have to realize that has been eradicated in the modern day because they were telling you all these other gods aren't real. Why? Because these other gods were holy gods that were in service to others, and they have to eliminate that. So they haven't gotten control of the Hebrew God yet, and the Christian God and the Muslim God, because that's one God, the creator of the universe that they tell about. They haven't been able to usurp that one and say that God was actually Anu. But they're trying with that Yahweh thing that they tried to do, where they tried to replace Jesus because the name Jesus in Sanskrit is Yahweh. And then they tried to do that with Jehovah and Jehovah and Yahweh and the other Yahweh. One was evil, one was good. I could see what they were trying to do there. And now they're just trying to usurp all the gods and call them the Anunnaki. Why? Because they're telling you that Anunnaki was your creator. And I just explained to you how they can't be. Because if they are, my DNA, your DNA, all of our DNA, as the Homo sapien sapien is a stronger DNA. Because when the God breeds with us, his DNA disappears and our DNA replaces his. So if that's the case, then they took their DNA and added it to the primate down here, gorilla, and the gorilla's DNA is superior to the supposed God who created us, because that's the DNA that's taking over. Do you see? So if they spliced their DNA and created a new DNA that was stronger than their DNA, why? Because that was their DNA they gave that primate, then that should have replaced the primate DNA, and we should have, as we evolved, we should have became more of their DNA and not less. And if they were here, because they claim that the Luciferians are the descendants, then they bred with us and bred themselves out. Again, I say, The only way that happens is their DNA is weak. So they're not superior to this primate in any fucking way. Know that. They're not superior to anyone on this earth in any way at all because their DNA has gone away and our DNA still remains. So the very people who claim they're descendants of these elongated skulls with superior DNA and superior brains, let's measure the brains of some of these people that claim they're of that descent. And let's check their DNA and see how much of it is Homo sapien sapien and how much of it is that junk DNA that is an alien DNA. Because there is no detectable alien DNA. Oh, well, that's the other part of the DNA. That means everyone on this earth has that DNA. Well, that's the one that they use to create us. So they use their DNA to create us, and that DNA is the one that's disappearing. Again, I say, superior, Homo sapien sapien. Anunnaki, inferior DNA. So even if they do, let's pretend they do exist, and let's pretend they came here. They're dumb, they're stupid, they have a lower IQ than we are because we're more resourceful, and we're creating nothing or something from nothing. We went from horses to an upgrade. Oh, that was when they came here. And well, then that means they've only been here for 150 years because that's when our technological boom started. So does anybody remember when they showed up then? What about prior to that? Because if we've been driving chariots for all this time and our upgrade just happened, that means it literally happened in 1948. So the Anunnaki didn't get here thousands of years ago to create the human race because the upgrade we got started about 100 years ago. Because 100 years ago, we were a horse and buggy. So something changed in the DNA of humans or our knowledge that is not Anunnaki, that we have made leaps and bounds far more than they could ever make in the last 6,500 years because they're showing up in their same rickety ass broke down POSs. Okay? Because if the stories are true, so not superior, dumb people. Star Trek had that race of people in the Star Trek, The Next Generation, and those are the ones that showed up and went, we need help, make it go. We need help, make it go. Ship broke, need repair. That's who the Anunnaki is. They didn't have any technology and they didn't have a brain, an IQ of above 70, but they were smart enough to be able to attack people and steal technology to and then kidnap people to make them fix their machines. And none of them were smart enough to learn how to do it for themselves. That character from the Star Trek The Next Generation would be the Anunnaki, if anybody, because their DNA is weak and they did not make any technological advances in the last 12,000 years. If they didn't exist exactly the way everyone claims the Anunnaki did. So if that's the case, they didn't have the fucking technology to come down here and take our DNA from the primate and blend it with any DNA to make us. Because the DNA they chose, they should have gave themselves that fucking upgrade. Because the DNA they mixed with the DNA of the primate down here to make us dumbass machine robots that was too stupid that they could be superior of is breeding their fucking DNA out. Okay? Because they don't even exist anymore, and they claim they do. Test their DNA. Let's test their DNA. They want to prove it. They're so fucking superior. Have them do the DNA test and show it to the world how superior their DNA is. Because I can look back in history and watch how that elongated skull and those giants, when they got here and started breeding with people, became smaller and smaller and smaller at the same rate that humans were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the human brain was advancing and not getting much bigger than it already is. But we're getting more intelligent, and their skulls and brain is getting smaller and smaller and smaller the more they deal with and breed with humans. That tells me that this is an upgrade. And the fact that people, like when Whitley Strieber wrote Communion, and he asked the Greys when they got here, what do you want? And they said communion. They wanted something we have in our DNA as an upgrade. So I tell you again, the Anunnaki did not create this. They were not our upgrade. They were consumed by us because they are inferior to us. So the Luciferians, again, bred themselves with each other because they didn't want to breed with anybody else's DNA, and they almost died. So they were forced to breed with humans, and their DNA went away. They didn't integrate and change our DNA to theirs. Their DNA got changed to ours. So that's two alien races that supposedly came here who bred with these lowly fucking monkeys whose DNA is now missing, has been incorporated as an echo, as a shadow of this Homo sapien sapien. So if somebody did create us, it was neither one of those two fucking races of beings. It was somebody else further back that created this DNA. Okay? And the fact that aliens are coming here to get an upgrade from us would suggest that somebody who created us created something really strong in the universe, and that people have been coming here from different species to get an upgrade of some kind for a very long time from this primate. Okay, so I'm not buying any of their bullshit that they're trying to sell because I know different. Okay. All right, guys, I got to go. It's like 5:45 now. I got to go. We got to get my mother in the shower and get dinner going. I love you guys. We'll pick up where we left off next week, talking about that. And so if you guys came here and you were like, Annie's talking about crop, it has nothing to do with the Orion, the book or the people or the Orion Crusaders or the law of one, it's everything I just talked about is the law of one. So I hate to sound like Moses, but when Moses was talking and the Jews got mad at him and said, Moses, if you don't shut up, we have to kill you because of the law of Moses. And he said, I am the law of Moses. Okay. So this I say to the rest of the world, for those of you who say I'm not talking about the law of one, I am the law of one. Okay. You're not talking about what Ra was talking about. I actually came here with Ra. In fact, there's a 52% of the population of this earth are wanderers. 68% are wanderers. 52% are wanderers who came here with Ra in the same collective. They came down here as wanderers. Ra didn't just stay here and go to the Council of Venus, and they're not just sitting up there coming through channeling, because that shit stopped 40 years ago, 42 years ago. The channeling stopped to Carla. There's no more communication by people with those people, but everybody claims it. Claim to be Ashtar and everything else. Okay? But there have been people who came here boots on the ground as wanderers that are part of that collective. So when I'm talking to you and telling you what's going on, I'm telling you what they couldn't tell Dawn and Carla 40 years ago. Because 40 years ago, exponentially, the people of this earth were nowhere near ready to hear this information. Nowhere near. Population of this planet was 2.7 billion souls. Today, it's 7.9. Some are saying it's already at 8 billion. Okay? So 4 times larger than the population before. Of that population, 68% of the population is not actually from here. 68% of the population of this earth are in fact wanderers. 68%. Of that 68%, 51% came here with Ra. They are part of the same collective. Why do you think I named, where's my finger? Why do you think I named my other book Orion Rising and my show Orion Rising? And I'm showing you the pyramids of Giza and, the Orion Nebula with the belt of Orion exactly mirroring the Giza Plateau. Why? Because that's where Ra came from, the belt of Orion. Read that in the books. Okay? All right, guys. I love you guys. Read my book. Buy it. Read it. Give it to your friends. Read it on ebook or buy the physical copy. They're on sale, hardcover and softcover, or the e-copy of it. You can get those online everywhere on the planet, on every platform. Just Google it or whatever search engine you use. All right, guys. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next Friday. We'll talk more about the law of one, and I'll give you more interpretive as to what's going on until we switch to the next phase. And then I won't be talking about the law of one by playing the Raw series, but I will continue to teach it as I go forward. Okay. So I'm only continuing doing that because I haven't moved into just talking about my book or this information, and I'm still not speaking. I'm going to start doing that, and I'm going to let you guys know that. So you guys should be thinking of questions that you would want to ask, because I do answer questions and interact with the crowd, and I really wish that you guys would have questions that you would want to ask so that we could do a Q&A, because there's so much more information that is available to you guys. And I try to broadly give you everything that I can give you for those of you who are live that can talk in the chat so that I can answer your questions. But some people are just listening, and then some people go, well, he's not talking about the law of one, so I'm out of here, because you don't recognize what I'm talking about. Right. So I'm going to start changing what it is that I'm saying I'm talking about, so people don't come in with the expectation of I'm only going to be playing audio of the law of one. Because if you want to hear that, you can just go and play it. They're all over the internet. You don't need me to interpret or expand. That you can listen to 40-year-old information that is giving you what could be given to the Earth's population 40 years ago, or you could listen to what information that people like myself, not just me, but people like myself on this planet who are currently trying to give you the updated exponential information as to what's going on in this solar system, on this planet, in this reality, this illusion that you think that you're trapped in. All right, guys, I love you. I will see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where you are tuning into this show.